couple of items, including linked together tonight. The moderator and our high school principal that I'd like to bump quickly in the meeting. And so if everyone's okay, we'll defer public comment until after we wrap those first three up. Okay? Mm-hmm. Great. So, Rhea's with us. Who wants to start? You guys have a presentation? Please, come right up. There's a microphone there, and let's have at it. Welcome.
This past year, many of us went to recreation camp. The first couple of days of camp, we couldn't use some of the playground because someone had vandalized it. They had to look for money to fix it.
That got us thinking about our school playground and what would happen if somebody vandalized it. We asked the superintendent if there was a fund set up to replace the playground, and there isn't. So our main project this year is to raise money to start a fund for playground repairs.
We have been collecting box tops and have a check for $434. We also opened a store that runs from 4 to 5 each day. We have raised $367.33 from that. Tonight we would like to give you $801.33 to start a fund for playground repairs at the elementary school.
We would also like to remind people that are watching that they can collect box tops all through the year and bring them to the elementary school. Link Together is open from 6:30 to 8:30 and 2:15 to 6. There is a collection bag on the bulletin board in the cafeteria.
We will be back in June with more money to add to the fund.
That's awesome. $801.33.
That's important that these kids be precise.
That's excellent. Would you do us one more favor? Would you each come up, just like you did, and run the chairs one more time and tell us your name? Yeah, I know you didn't practice this part, but come on up. You can do it. Just your name. Just say your name.
It's just
Eric.
Eric.
Lillian.
Caitlin.
Caitlin.
Jillian.
Jillian.
Danica.
Hey, guys, thank you. Thank you very much.
They actually want to present you with the fun.
You want to actually do...
They
I
brought
dressed
it all.
up just for this. I'm going to get everything out of my pocket so I don't look any bigger than I... Camera adds. The camera adds, you know.
They also have catalogs that they made up
Wow.
from our store that they have one for each school board member.
You do? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Let's do that. You want to hand those out?
Goes up.
Go ahead.
We're going to start on those people right there.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you very much.
For me. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
We'll make a mess of the person working the cameras trying to record this, but come up here. If we want to do this up here where the board can see it and everybody else can see it. So you guys want to make this donation to set up this fund? Yes, come on up. Why don't you all come? You've got the money, so you have to come. You can come too.
Well, we have two people with money.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's right. You have a check. Okay. So, are we all here? You sure? Boy, I'm feeling big right now. Hey, so this is all of the money that you have collected from the store?
Yeah.
Good heavens. Did you order a lockbox? Look at this, man. Let's do this. Holy cow. Let's set this right there.
Finance is
Perfect.
here.
Whoa. Thank you. And you have a check, and this is from Box Tops?
Yeah.
Listen, I want to say thank you very much to each one of you on behalf of the school board and the school district. That's an outstanding thing. I know what great work you guys do. Let me see. If the board, have the board members stand up. Let's do this.
Yeah, that be good to get a
I
nice
love to hold
picture.
money. Somebody take a picture. Come right over here beside me. Will you get one too?
You should get in there.
No, it's the kids. No, it's the kids. Can't see Elizabeth.
Is Michael hiding behind me? 'Cause I'm-
A little bit that way. There we go.
Can you Photoshop that just? You guys, we just can't say thank you.
You guys are
enough.
amazing.
You're so amazing.
I know, thank you. This catalog's pretty nice.
Is it?
Finger
Yeah.
puppets.
Is there a deadline for the Valentine's orders? Do you have a...
You can order anything, any time of the year you want.
Perfect. Great.
Hey,
Oh,
to recoup, we want to
Valentine's
say thank you.
I might have to
for
order
all
a
of your
couple of
leadership
those.
in having such great things.
Do you guys make these things?
You guys-
No. Do you make the things that are in the store?
You're selling.
Oh, we guys. Good going.
We got some
You should
serious.
also know that we received notification today that they accepted our last box top, so there's another 240 that will be coming down in June. So the kids' goal was $1,000, and they have made it.
Wow.
Wonderful.
You guys, for all of that work, hard work, and that donation, you get open mic. So if there's anything else you wanted to say, just step right up.
Do you want to complain about the school lunches?
Longer good things.
Hey guys, thank you for coming. We look forward to seeing you in June, and we'll work with the superintendent and our business administrator to make sure that we set this fund up. And, and great things will happen. We should also talk about when we do some work on the playground, maybe we can, you know how when you go down the side, what I'm thinking is, some places you drive down the street, and you can see like a sign that says this part of the road is, help me, not sponsored.
Maintained
but,
by or
adopted
adopted
by.
by.
It's adopted by a group. Maybe we could talk about an adoption designation that we
For
could
Link
put somewhere.
Together.
Okay?
That'd be great.
For Link Together. All right, you guys, thank you for coming. Homework now. It's 7 o'clock. It's gotta be Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'd like to remind all the parents that Saturday is the deliberative session at 10 a.m. See you there.
On behalf of the school board, I'd be glad to hold that money.
Would you like to?
Well, it's a good thing.
He said something about pens and
I was going
others.
to say, good thing I'm here.
Good thing you're here. Oh, yes, we need a motion.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we should do that.
I'll make a motion to accept
$801.33
from Link Together.
from Link Together.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Mr. Zink. Any other discussion?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Outstanding. Then on a motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Mr. Zink. Did I do that backwards? All those in favor of accepting the donation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. Thank you again, you guys. Nice job.
Thanks, Rig.
Next up, please, guys, help yourself. You can go.
They're all clearing out.
You really, it's really the best way to start the meeting is to hear young voices reciting the pledge.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, folks. Good night.
Thank you.
No.
Mr. Hawkins, we'll take you next and get you back to all of the things that keep you busy. And Mr. Mazzoni, will set him up next, and then the board can just sit and deliberate and commiserate the rest of the night.
This is the impact I have in a room.
Your notes were in the packet, so we've had a chance.
You said you were grateful to young people. You included me.
You were at the top of that list.
I'm here for my semi-annual visit to the school board because we have the session coming up on Saturday, and I'd just like to check in and see if there's anything unusual that you anticipate happening. And in the past, you've been kind enough to give me a little bit of a semi-script where I know who's speaking to which article, just so I know who to turn to when things go horribly, horribly wrong. Typically, when that happens, I turn to Nate and blame him. But so I'm just here to check in. I haven't brought my copy of the rules. I haven't changed for the last couple of years. I think people pretty much understand what the procedures are. So I'm just here to see if there's anything I need to know.
So I guess I would jump right in first, if you don't mind, and ask. I don't remember it being an issue in the past, but I made notes about non-residents speaking and the school board or their designee speaking to the article, et cetera. And so I wanted to ask about our superintendent, business administrator, and try to just be reminded of how we've dealt with them in the past, given that they're both non-residents.
Right, there's all kinds of schools of thought. What I've typically done, I've just said that I'm going to assume that the superintendent and employees of the district who have pertinent information to an article have permission to speak. It's either that, or I can just ask for a motion to be put on the floor to allow the superintendent and other employees who have pertinent information to be allowed to speak with the permission of the meeting. Typically, I just take it as read.
Yep.
And move on unless somebody has an objection.
Great.
If there's some other person from out of town that wants to speak, then I'll ask permission of the meeting to do that. But so I think that's how I handle it for the town, how I handle it for the school district, unless there's an objection.
Great.
How many articles are there?
2.
Three.
3. Nate,
Budget.
Well, Article 1 is
Well, one
positions.
is,
appointment of officers,
2 is,
Yeah.
Okay.
is the bond.
the budget,
Article
and then the
3
and then the bond,
operating budget.
Sorry.
in some
Yeah.
sequence of that.
So
Okay.
we don't, at the deliberative, we don't deliberate on Article 1, right? The positions, the election, right?
It's just to tee it up for the election.
For the election, okay.
This is the first session of town meeting, and the ballot box is the second session of the town meeting, the school district meeting in this case. So,
So, we've been through a kind of discussion here. We've had lots of conversation, lots of public forums. We've had the public hearing. I know that I met briefly with the superintendent and the business administrator to talk about preparation for deliberative, and I asked them to take the presentations that they have prepared and delivered in the past for the project and for the budget and scale them down measurably so that if the room seemed to be filled with multiple new faces that might want and benefit from some presentation, that they should be ready, and that would drive the handouts that we deliver, but that we'd have to play that by ear, because probably, I could speak in a moment or two to the proposed budget, and Mike, maybe you could speak for a moment or two to the project before that, Article 2, and unless there's a call for a presentation or more information, would dispense with that. It'll be in the handouts available to everybody that walks in, but they can see it on Channel 13, and we've had it multiple times. I don't want to miss the opportunity to educate and inform again, but my sense is that most folks that are interested in the deliberative are in the room that day. And so we've got plenty of recordings of those presentations out there already. Any other thoughts? So that's,
Well, all I would say is if there is a huge showing, and I hope there is,
we'll be ready.
we'll be ready to, that's a great opportunity to get into more detail.
Yep,
So,
to offer the
kind
information.
of read the audience.
To read the audience.
Mhm.
So,
yeah, people are
Work
going
for
to
you?
have about 3 minutes each to speak,
Yep.
particularly if there's a lot of people. And I try to keep it pretty much to the 3 minutes, because it's not fair if someone takes 5 and then.
Right.
It's just not fair.
Yep.
And I'm going to look with disfavor upon an
Can you hold
early
me to that,
attempt.
too?
Sorry?
Can you hold him to that?
Sure. I have an electric cattle prod. I can just give him a little zap. I'm going to look with disfavor upon any early attempt to cut off debate. I think people need an opportunity to say what they have to say. If it goes on and on and on, at some point that may come up, but
Yeah.
I don't want to be, if there's people waiting in line, they're going to get a chance to speak. Anybody who wants to speak, everyone who wants to speak will be allowed to speak once before anybody's allowed to speak twice, that kind of thing. So, just the usual, trying to be fair.
So just clarifying, because it's not the usual, and that every community handles some of these pieces a little bit differently, but would you like slides with each warrant article?
It's
Is that
completely up to
helpful
you.
as a visual?
It's completely up to you. I'm
Okay.
not going to decide what you should or shouldn't present. I'm just there to referee.
Okay.
So if you want to present slides and that's the way you think you want to do it, it's your meeting to that extent.
Does it require a reading again?
well,
He
that's,
dispenses with it as a part of his rules, as I remember it.
oh.
I mean,
okay.
I
That's
can
what I
read them.
But-
I find that, all you really need to do is say what the subject of the article is and how much money it is.
And they're copies, too. I mean, everybody gets a copy of the article.
But there's no harm in reading it.
They can read
If
it.
people decide that they want me to read it, I don't have a problem reading it. It's just if you have 15 of them, it gets to be
Right.
Yes.
a bit much. It's basically, it's a bunch of boilerplate about police cruisers with a dollar figure attached to it or whatever. The boilerplate is dictated by DRA and
Yep.
the Attorney General, and they tell us what we can and can't say, so. I think most people want to know that it's about the school building and this is what it costs. And renovation of the facility or whatever the article is. That's what you need to know. but I'll read it if people want me to. Most people don't like to hear the sound of my voice.
Mine either.
So.
Any other questions? Thoughts about the day?
I think if it's up visually for people to see and it's just described, that should be sufficient.
Yeah, you're going to have handouts and stuff, I'm sure.
And they're going to be ready to do a presentation, to go through a few slides and to go through the details of it. So throwing up the language of of Article 2 and then Article, that's no problem. That'll be
They're
there.
already on
anyway.
slides.
They're
I
already
just
there.
wanted to-
So if they're, and I said to them, if you are all set up and you've strung up cords and you've hooked up the projector and you've gotten the screen out and there's no call for it because it's a smaller crowd than we might have thought, or the folks are all familiar with the material, then it will not have been wasted effort. It was, you were ready to go. But if we get a good turnout and there's a lot of faces that are new and people that want to hear about it, to get some of the details, great opportunity to educate. So
I want to remind people, too, that if they're there for the town meeting and they stay, they have to re-register.
Yep.
Right.
It's a separate governing body. I'll remind people on the day, but you can't just sit there and think that you're okay. You got to go re-register.
So Chris, we're going to have the architect there. I think we'll probably have Ekman there, the construction manager. Now, people come up and ask a question. Is this an opportunity for back and forth like that, or is it more statement?
It's your pleasure. It depends on what you want to do. It doesn't matter to me. I think you gotta play it by ear.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, I think Chris already suggested, kind of take it as the norm that the staff will speak to articles when they have something to offer. We'll probably just say, look, as an extension of staff, there's some consultants here that can shed light as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's not up to me to decide
Right.
how you guys handle that stuff. I have a personal bias against making stuff up on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe what you want to do, if the question looks like it has any complexity to it, is just say, we'll think about that and we'll get back to you with that information, but we want to give it some thought first. That's just my personal suggestion, though. I'm opposed to making stuff up. So this is important, so you want to make sure that you get information out there that's fully vetted.
Yeah.
If it's a simple, straightforward question about something that's in a document, you can refer them to the document or just answer the question. That's entirely up to you, though. That's
All right.
the meeting really belongs to the voters, to the district, to decide what they want to do and not do, and you're just doing what you think is best, I guess.
And just as a reminder to the board, and so that you're aware, at the board's request, we've retained legal counsel and bond counsel will both be in attendance.
Is it Gordon Graham?
No, he was not available, so John Radigan, who is the town's
Okay.
attorney, is representing the district.
All right, good.
And David Barnes will
David
be there
Barnes.
as bond counsel.
Yeah.
For the
okay.
bond. Okay. Anything else?
Okay.
Chris, always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll see you Saturday morning,
We'll be
sir.
back this time next year.
Thank you.
We'll see you Saturday.
Yes, now we're recognizing the other Chris.
Mr. Mazzoni.
Is it on?
As an addendum to the plug for our deliberative session, we do have ample childcare available starting at 9 o'clock for the town deliberative piece. So it's always a challenge with sports season, but the National Honor Society, both the middle and high school, as well as our student athletic leadership team, and student government. There's a ton of kids. We may have more sitters than cities. So
Thank you for coordinating that, Chris, and for responding.
well, I can't
to
take
my
the
question
credit.
at
The
time.
purpose is I want to sort of push that off to the folks the leaders of those organizations and those kids. So
Thank them all and you.
So what?
Thank you.
So we have babysitting
we do.
for both town and school. You need to bring a license to register. And what else do we need to say out loud? Come with a happy face and smile, and we'll see you at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. 10 for school.
As I think was overstated, I have quite a tough act to follow. But there's 5 really good reasons that were here before to why we put so much attention and effort into safety and security. And, it's sort of been well-versed the surveillance pieces and the security pieces that we've sort of talked about. I know that Chief True had a chance to come speak both in public and non-public session. I'm going to review a little bit how sort of our changes to our emergency operations manual have sort of come to be. Talk a little bit about the certifications that are in place that allow us to do that really well. And throughout sort of some of this, I don't want the impression to be that I'm purposely being coy, but there are pieces to this that I'd rather not share with the general public, and I'm sure you understand why. So it'll be detailed enough, but at the same time, somewhat pretty vanilla. So by state statute and local statute, we are required for every school to have an updated emergency operations plan. This year we, again, took a look over the summer, went through with a fine-tooth comb, and it's sort of important to kind of point out some of the things that you may or may not think of. I think there are a myriad of things that show up in the news and are sensationalized through the media that happen all too frequently. But some of the words that you might hear today or throughout sort of these presentations or when you're reviewing the plan are these ones. So look at things like reverse evacuations, lockdown, shelter in place, drop, cover, and hold, the bomb threat, and the fire evacuation. Those are ones that we typically sort of look to sort of, concentrate on. We don't always go into a lockdown. We don't always go into a shelter in place. But, I think for those two specifically, it's important to say a reverse evacuation would be something if we've got an open campus and we've got phys ed teams out on the field. And, yeah, it can be a rabid fox that's been spotted in the area or a police chase. But we would call a reverse evacuation. Everyone stays in the building. We continue classes as they are. A lockdown is sort of more the one that there's either an intruder or a situation that we want to keep everybody sort of safe and quiet and give the illusion that there's nobody in the building. Doors are locked, lights are off, something to that effect. And I'll sort of talk about that a little bit more in detail later. The shelter in place is an interesting one because that is one where you could have a student with behavioral issues in the hall who needs some sort of intervention that really requires more confidentiality and privacy. A medical issue where a teacher or student may require, an ambulance or some kind of medical care. We want to give them some dignity and care, but learning still continues when that happens. So drop, cover, and hold would be something, a hurricane, a tornado, some kind of weather event. That may be something you might see if there was an issue with train derailment, something at the airport, the nuclear power plant, things like that. Bomb threat. In fact, we were able to sort of practice the protocol today, not here in Newmarket, but there were a number of schools in the state who had a bomb threat called, and we were able to sort of make sure that we disseminated our bomb threat protocol pretty quickly to everybody who has a phone in front of them, even though it's always right by the phone anyway. So they got that in real time and pretty quickly. And of course, the tried and tested fire drill, which I'm sure everyone's used to. It's a good segue because those two dates are pretty important as to why it's a big deal to kind of look at those things. So does anybody know why I'd put the date of December 1st, 1958 up? I did not have a plan. Mike?
Was that the last time somebody was in a school died in a fire?
That is the last time somebody died in a school fire. Does anybody know why I put January 20th, 2017 up? That's the last time we had a student lost in a school shooting. So we're mandated to do fire drills and fire alarms and evacuations 9 or 10 times a year, depending on where you live. There's no, right now, mandate for how many times we're to practice a situation for a violent offender or an intruder. So we decided to use the fire drill model for our kids because we think it's that important. Looking at qualifications and certifications, this is a really tough part for me because it sounds a little bit like it's tooting one's horn, but that's not the point. The point is so you understand why Officer Stevens and I have spent time and money together to make sure that we're able to do this well. So these are, people love when you throw acronyms at them. So I'm going to throw a lot of acronyms at you, but I'll explain them and why they're important. So the first one is ALICE. And the ALICE sort of movement takes place. It started in Findlay, Ohio, and it was an ex-military and police officer whose wife was a teacher, and they realized, hey, what's your plan if there's a school shooting or an event? And they sort of worked backwards from there and sort of became this nationally known organization. And so that acronym actually stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And that's the model by which we train not only our students, but everybody who works with our students. It's important, and I'll look at the lockdown piece because the lockdown's changed quite a bit. And every time there's an unfortunate event, Officer Stevens first will sort of start and forensically look back at some of the things that happen. And it's sort of a morbid study, but we do it together, and we say, okay, what went this way? How did this go? And what was the response of the bad guy? Typically, they're fragile individuals, and there are patterns that they follow. And if every time there's been a major event, we'll look at them and say, okay, how would this work in our building? If heaven forbid the worst were to happen, how do our procedures fit with this person's profile or MO? One of the examples is if you looked at the situation that took place in Virginia Tech. That shooter went in, he went to one sort of facility that had classrooms on each side of the hall. And he knew that when they went into lockdown, all he'd have to do is barricade one side. They would all be sitting sort of on the floor under their desks and waiting for the all clear. So that basically, his kill rate was exceptionally high. And when they went back into his forensic history, they looked and noticed that when he had gone to the shooting range, that he had practiced shooting at targets on the floor and walked down the range shooting straight down. Because he knew that when the school went into lockdown, he would be able to do what he wanted to do that way. So I don't want to scare the world, but those are the types of things that we sit down and we look at and we say, okay, how would we avoid that? The hardest thing to do is to sit in front of you all as parents or my own kids and say, I can 100% guarantee you this is never going to happen in Newmarket, because I can't do that. But what I can tell you is if somebody with bad intent wanted to do something really bad in Newmarket, we would be the best prepared and be able to mitigate the damage that person would be able to do, because it's important to us. The next piece is obviously FEMA is a Department of Homeland Security. The training that Officer Stevens and I went through for that certifies us to develop emergency operations plans for school districts. And we took the second part of that training, which is sort of the part that you never want to have to use, but it's the debrief for anytime there is an event. And these aren't sort of sit and park and bark where somebody stands up there and talks to you and tells you what it is. We actually work on developing our emergency plans. I had the opportunity to prepare and write a press briefing for a post-event to give you a scenario. And it's a certification process for all of these. In the Alice workshop, we actually were involved in an active shooter training. So we're in scenarios where we're people in classrooms, an active shooter comes in, we're put through different scenarios for how to respond, and that piece. Those pieces, because of that Alice training, which is cutting edge and also sort of very widely accepted, through that training, Wayne and I are able to train anyone in our own district at no cost. So the thought would be district-wide, we'd sort of work into this as we go. Obviously, with the FEMA trainings, those pieces are pretty amazing as well. Being able to write and be really comfortable with an emergency ops plan, be able to review them constantly, to be able to have conversations with Central Office Administration about what those look like. Those are all pluses. To this point, what we've done with that work, we start with our A team. Chris and I worked really closely together when we were a team to make sure that this was top notch. I think he'd probably agree with this, but we always said if staff and students are feeling emotionally and physically safe, they're going to be at their apex of learning. So we wanted to sort of take all of that guesswork of, am I safe when I walk in this door, right off of everyone's plate, because we want teachers to feel like, hey, today I'm here to teach. I don't have to worry about the other things. And the kids say, I'm here to learn. So that was the huge piece for us that we continue with. We worked down with the teaching staff. We used an entire 3.5-hour training to go through all of the tenets, including the active shooter demonstrations with our entire staff. Again, I'd sort of give a plug to the Newmarket Police Department. So they offered individuals to help us with that. That went really well. Carry that back down to our professional staff. I added contractors there because in the ongoing discussions about the work that lies ahead of us, hopefully, is that those folks that will be in and out of our building will understand the concepts that we expect for everyone who's going to come into contact with not only with our kids, but with our employees. And Chris and I had a chance to sort of practice those things over time. So that's something I feel really confident about, that maybe a question that's out there. We've been through a lot of construction projects together in a lot of different firms, and have had to go through trainings with different degrees of success. So we're comfortable with that piece, more so than I think I would have been maybe 5 years ago. What you probably are going to start hearing about in the next month to month and a half is we're going to start getting into advisories at the high school and middle school, as well as a town meeting format, to start talking a little bit more about what to do if we're in a lockdown situation where we're not leaving the building. So if we were in this room here, if this were a classroom, there was an alert that we didn't know where the threat was coming from, we would know that we're going to barricade that door. We would know that if that door was breached, there are things here to fight back. But sort of working and looking around the room right now, and I'd sort of challenge everyone to take 30 seconds and say, what would I do to make sure that door doesn't open? They talk about using ties, belts, other chairs, tables, all of those things. And we've actually had staff practice those things. We have our teachers, and we have some that are phenomenal at it. We'll actually go through and say, hey, if there's a bookcase over by that desk, Lisa, your job, if we go into lockdown, is to push that bookcase in front of the desk. And so we've actually practiced it. We do it in a way that's it's serious, but it's not meant to scare kids. It's meant to say, hey, if this were to happen, this is how we'd be prepared. So again, I go back to 1958. By practicing our fire drills 10 times a year, people know what to do in a fire. If we practice our evac and our lockdown drills 10 times a year, people will fall to their highest level of training. We're all about academic thinking, but in instances like these, we don't want people to think. We want them to do what they've been trained to do. You react and you respond. You'll see probably sometime mid-March, we would like to have the parents come in, talk a little bit about some of the words that they may hear. Again, that's tough because sometimes you've got to deliver some information to people that's not exciting to hear, and it's something you don't want to think about. But it's out there, and we have to think about it. One of the pieces that has come up is sort of how these things are communicated publicly and all of those pieces, and those are things we'll continue to work through. If I just take the lockdown one, and again, I just want to sort of talk about it then and now because I think it's sort of what you'll see in more of the training pieces. In 2001, if we said lockdown, you probably all right now, I'd look at you, you'd go under your desk, somebody would run and shut the light and lock the door, right? Is that pretty much in your workplace is what you do, or if you work in another school? In our school, what we'd likely would do is announce that threat. So if we were able to, which we won't always be able to, we'd say, there's an intruder down by the gym, which is a cue for the people in the other parts of the building to take a different action than to hide. I'm not going to get into what that is, but they know what it is. When we used to just hide, now we barricade, as I alluded to before. Rather than hunker down, if somebody breaks through that door, everything that's available to you becomes a weapon, because at that point it's about stopping somebody who's emotionally fragile, who has really bad intent. The thing about these folks is they don't always come in with one target. If the person before reached headlines because they were able to hurt 25 people, then this person wants to hurt 26. So these folks typically come in with a number in mind, and it's like almost like a game. So there are some times when you have people who it's a domestic situation or things like that, but there's sort of different types and different ways you'd react and respond to those things. Again, through February and March, we're going to do a little bit of this, and I think this is great timing to come and talk to you as a board and also the public at home, so they're going to start hearing some of the words that we just heard, and we'll sort of put some of that information out as it happens, and then wrap it up with a parent date so that they'll be able to say, hey, my son or daughter came home and they were talking about this. Can you tell me more about this? Because we think it's really important, and we want families to have ongoing conversations about that. It's not a bad idea through some of the trainings we've been to for you to have some of those conversations at home. If this were to happen in your home, what would you do? I remember when we were kids, they had those Smokey the Bear commercials. Everyone had a rally point. You knew what window you're going to go out, and mom and dad were going to check in with you at this spot. And we've sort of gotten away from that, and those are all good things to do. Because, again, you want people to act and react. You don't want them to have to think and say, what should I do or what should I have done? That continued collaboration with FEMA, with Alice, with the Newmarket Police Department sort of will always be ongoing. Mr. Foster, who is our new assistant principal, will become Alice certified by the end of April. And that's something that's really important to us and we really believe to be the right way to do things to keep kids safe. And to wrap it all back in, if everyone's safe, they can worry about what they're supposed to be doing instead of what might happen if they don't. So, not a great topic, certainly not a fun one, but we've got time for questions. Again, I don't want to sound purposely evasive if people ask about details, so I'll just say I'm not comfortable talking about that in public, but that's in no way meant to be disrespectful, but please fire away.
Chris, I think it's important for people to hear the certifications that you guys have and the way that you can apply those things to the school. One thing that I thought of as a parent without a student at the junior senior high is I don't know community-wide what we might want to do, because there might be some things that the community might need to get involved in. I don't know if that's something you ever would even consider, but it just made me think that the more people that know that these safety protocols are in place, I think it reassures a lot of people and might make them feel a little bit better.
I think the communication piece is uber important. I think since Meredith's been here and with Chris and us having much improved dialogue at the district level, we're sort of branching out. I know that the town employees have gone through the Alice workshop training at the workshop side of it, and we're working together. I've been working with Mr. Pine as well, so we've got some plans to make sure we keep enhancing what's going on in the entire.
And you did answer, I had another question about what was going on at the elementary school, and I'm glad to hear that Sean's involved in that too.
Yeah, I would say one of the pieces for us is that, moving forward, what we'd like to be able to do, I think, is send home some guidelines for parents about how to respond in an emergency situation, because it is very difficult when you're communicating in real time. And obviously parents are worried and concerned, but the more they understand what our training is, how we're going to respond, and what we need from them in an emergency situation to manage and do our very best to take care of their children, the easier it is if and when you face an emergency situation. It reduces the chaos. Everyone sort of knows, okay, I'm going to have to report to this spot, or I'm going to be getting information via text or phone updates or email updates, so that piece is as clear as possible. But it is difficult because our number one priority in an emergency is take care of kids.
Right.
And the communication comes second. The challenge is that communication may also be happening simultaneously with a device in the hands of a student in the midst of this situation. And there are more of them than there are of us. And even though we ask them, to sort of put those devices away and help us out in that situation, you can imagine that in an emergency, people are reaching out. And so, again, communicating about what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be sending official information helps reassure people that it is coming and that we're doing our very best to keep them in the loop.
And as someone who's sort of 20 years now into a vocation, that the number one thing for any of us who started down this road of education was we wanted to do things for kids. It's sort of a shift to have to think about this, and it's not something that we want to have to think about. It pains teachers. I think in the middle of this presentation, and there certainly are some parts of our Alice training that were emotionally really difficult for someone who cares about kids, but also who sort of got into this line of work, to know that, I can't, there's a lot of things I can guarantee you that I'm going to work really hard and that I'm going to be a positive force. But I can't guarantee that someone with that intent isn't going to try something. What I can guarantee you is we're going to do everything in our power to mitigate what that person's able to do. But
and
it's
that's
not
the
a
message that I think
thing.
people need to hear, that you guys are getting trainings that most people don't even know exist, that can be shared within the schools to do exactly what you said, to keep people safe, the children and the staff.
Right, and that goes into the new buildings, the addition renovation, all the safety things that we've put in place so that we actually can help our administration keep our children safe. And that's one of the important parts of the new AdReno.
Well, and this is an acronym, Elizabeth, that I'm not able to sort of, because it's a long one, but CEPTED is a certification that Officer Stevens possesses, and that certifies the safety of buildings and the layout of buildings. So he's sort of been a big part of the discussion with some of the things I brought to the table as part of the building committee, but will be an ongoing piece of that discussion throughout this. And that's a certification a lot of people don't even know exists, but we have it right here in our own home.
Hey, one of the things that I think is in all of these conversations that it's important, when we're talking about our facility, we're not talking about making a fortress. Chris isn't talking about making a military force. What we're talking about is time is really important. We've got a great response, a great force of law enforcement right here in town, but what they've got to do in our schools is make sure that should anything happen, that the structure and the staff and the training all allow us as much time as possible for those first responders or those law enforcement folks to be on site, which they will be in moments. I mean, the response time is great, but for all of us, the longer you can deter and defer, the better. So
and
this is
to
great.
give you, Nate, that's a great point. Most school shootings are over in under 3 minutes. The response time of the Newmarket Police Department, when we've timed it for any of our drills, is under 2.
Right.
So that's just a huge piece. And the other piece is, I will sit here and tell you today that this is as good as it can be, but I won't tell you that it's as good as it can ever be, because these are things that oftentimes Wayne and I will be on the phone with each other. Hey, I just saw this thing over the weekend, because this really is central. Once we take care of this for people, our instruction and our learning is going to be, it's going to be tough. It's going to be even better than it is.
Chris, generally, when you're introducing this subject to elementary school kids, it must be a very different approach. I don't know how you guys do it, but it's
nuanced, to say the least.
I mean,
It's
to
amazing
bring-
what
to
they
bring-
know and
Yeah.
what they know to do as a parent.
and yet to bring this fear into a young kid's thought. We're living in Newmarket, in a wonderful community. There must be a balance you guys take to make sure you don't.
I think it's the same, right? I mean, I think initially kids are very afraid of fire alarms, or many kids are, right? It's loud, the lights are flashing, it feels chaotic, but that's why we practice. And the same is true, right? We don't say, geez, someone could be walking into your school armed with a rifle trying to kill children. We say, we practice drills in our school so that we can help you stay safe if there's an emergency. And this drill is called a lockdown, and here's what we do in a lockdown. We talk with kids about that and talk about the real terms. How can they help each other stay safe? Why would we stay quiet? Well, if someone was out there, we don't want them to know where we are. We're trying to hide from someone. You very much talk about it in developmentally appropriate ways, but at the same time, if a kid has a real question, you do your best to give them an honest answer. Kids do know information, and you may say, I'll talk with you about that separately in a little while, but we do our best to help make it routine. I mean, you've been in schools recently. I mean, you were doing these trainings probably as an elementary school student.
So frequency, I think, would be the word I would use.
Yeah.
It sort of becomes practice and part of what you do. It's surprisingly, too, it's a different conversation depending on the teacher. Different teachers, even within a middle school, but it's a different conversation with elementary teachers than it might be with a high school teacher. And so you have to sort of take that into consideration, too. But
Right.
that's not different than a conversation that Ms. Nato would have to have regarding academics either. They're different audiences, and so you sort of take that into account. But I think Meredith's spot on. It's frequency. You be as honest. I think the best advice I got before I was a parent was you answer their questions, but only their questions. So they're going to ask you questions, but they're going to ask you what they want to know and what they're ready for. And if you keep going, that's typically you sort of airing some of your things. But we try to stay vanilla. But as Meredith said, there may be of the 8 of you, I might say, you know what, now let's talk over on the side here, because it sounds like you have more questions. And so it's to be ready, but not to be alarmed.
I remember hearing the
That's good.
security issues and so forth a long time ago, and I can't remember which one of you, but said that one of the obstacles, or one of the potential obstacles, was getting the staff to be acceptive of talking about difficult things, particularly at the grade school level.
It can be a challenge. It can be a challenge. I can only speak for the folks with whom I work. And again, I think frequency and constancy of purpose, I would say, are the things that sort of have helped. It's and acknowledging for people. This is an uncomfortable topic. I told you when I got up here, I do not enjoy talking about this, but it's a necessary evil of what we have to do and what the world looks like now.
Wow. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, anything else you'd like to?
No, I think it's done a great job.
Folks,
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, sir. All right, having done that, let's go back to our agenda, and I'll open the floor to public comment. once? Okay. Hearing none, let's go back to the agenda, and we'll start with Julia. Appreciate the fact that you joined us, as always, and take it away.
So the boys basketball team, their record is 11-2, and their next game is a big one. It's tomorrow away against Epping. The girls also have a game tomorrow away against Epping, but their record is 7-6. Hockey's record is 5-6, and their next game is Saturday home against St. Thomas. In elementary school, February 22nd, there's going to be the 5th grade trip to Enterprise City, which is always a fun one.
Yeah.
It's kind of a quiet time of year right now, so.
What is Enterprise City?
It's the kids. They run for jobs or they apply for different jobs, and they practice their use of money handling skills, and they get a paycheck which they can go spend at different stores, and it's like a little town. It's fun.
And what grades?
5th grade.
It's right in Dover. It's the cutest place.
One of the assignments that came home last week for us was looking at needs versus wants and determining what things on the list given were something that you needed to spend money on and something that was a want. So it's sort of getting monetary intelligence out. It's neat.
Excellent. Let's hit the calendar then. Make sure that we, there's a couple of items on the agenda maybe we can tackle, or no, there's an item on the agenda, we could tackle at the same time. We have said it, let's say it one more time, this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the junior senior high gym, the deliberative session. We met with the moderator a few minutes ago. The deliberative session, for those at home, is the opportunity for us to deliberate one more time the articles that are on the warrant that will become the ballot. So this is not a night, or this is not a day when we vote to approve those articles. It's when we debate and discuss anything that might need to change in those articles before the ballots get printed. We have one more bond information session that is scheduled during the day for those that find that time better. That's the 15th of February, a Wednesday morning. It's here at Town Hall at 9 a.m. Board meeting next on the 16th, 2 weeks from tonight. So if we flip into March.
School vacation week.
Yeah, school vacation week is that week of the 27th of February through the 3rd of March. We are scheduled for a school board meeting that Thursday night, the 2nd of March. Given that it's vacation week, it might be a perfect time for us all to meet, but given it's vacation week and anticipating that some might take some time away, let me throw out this suggestion. March just happens to be a 5-Thursday month, and we have at least a couple of times that I can remember in the past bumped from 1st and 3rd to 2nd and 4th. How does that affect you? Will you think about that? We could simply drop the 2nd and not have it, but we might want to meet again before the election on the 14th.
I was going to say.
I think so.
So we could kick to the 9th instead, if that's a time that's available for folks. The 16th is going to come up too fast, generally speaking, after election.
Right.
For, I solemnly swear, for the oath of office to be delivered, et cetera. So you could have an organizational meeting that's pushed off 1 week to the 23rd. I didn't mention that to the superintendent before, so I got to make sure she checks.
The 9th is great.
Okay, good.
I currently have a conflict on the 23rd, but
Well,
we can.
And that, that may be somebody else's problem, to decide what you guys want to do with that day. So let's go to the 9th. Can we schedule that right now? That we'll postpone or reschedule the 2nd, the meeting of March 2nd, and we'll make it the subsequent Thursday, March 9th.
I won't be here on the 9th,
Oh,
but that's
okay.
okay.
I can be.
That's okay.
What's the rest of us look like? The rest of us, we'll still have a good, or a solid quorum. And then between now and the 16th, between now and 2 weeks from now, let's contemplate what we might do with the meeting of March 16th. It will, again, be very, very close to or right following the election.
So you won't have to worry about that.
Right.
Okay. So that would be
But
up
you-
to us and the new person. Does everybody want to do it on the 14th? 16th? 14th?
But you've got a conflict.
I have a conflict on the 23rd.
Yeah. So,
So the option is the 9th and the 16th?
so we're on for the 9th. We'll do that.
Or
You
the
could-
30th.
You could, yeah, instead of postponing the 16th to the 23rd, you could bag off one more to the 30th, but then you come right back a week later and meet. So maybe you could explore, you could potentially, I don't know what you do, Tuesday, Wednesday, there might be some other nights that you could schedule. Or you could drop it all together. Depends, you might
Not
have,
having more board meetings?
you might have a lot of work to do.
Maybe we can discuss that
On
at
the
our
16th,
next meeting
yeah.
on the 16th.
So we'll try to put a plan together for the
Right.
16th. But right now, so as it stands right now, our next meeting is February 16, and subsequent to that, March 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that should be before us about the calendar? Okay.
Oh, let's talk about bingo.
Oh,
Hello,
yeah, Miss
bingo. February 11th.
And March 11th,
March 11th. Let's talk about February, because that's Valentine's bingo.
Valentine's Bingo.
Yes, come play bingo. And Saturday night, there's a rock and roll show. What do you call it? A band concert at the Stone Church. If anybody wants to go, starts at 8 o'clock, and the band is called 6 Feet Over. Not under, because that's not good.
And that's benefiting Project Graduation.
Project graduation. Thank you.
That's better than Elizabeth just trying to invite us all out for.
Clarifying.
That's great. Okay. Anything else for our calendar of events? All right, then I'll ask the superintendent to report.
Okay. So a couple of things I wanted to acknowledge, and we will have the student join us at a subsequent meeting, but I want to congratulate Catherine Samuelson, Jr. at the high school, who was the third place state finisher in the VFW Voice of Democracy contest. So she's been awarded a $500 scholarship for being a part of that, and we will have her join us at a subsequent meeting, but thanks to Catherine McGilvery again for her support of that work. I also want to recognize 8th grade ELA teacher Katie Lianza for her work. She did some working class. NPR had basically sort of a sample lesson plan saying, okay, think about a way to ask students to write an advertisement for something intangible, things that money can't buy. And her students participated in that project, and she was included in an NPR story about that. So I will send that around for you to look at as well. If you missed it, and we're trying to have some students come to a subsequent meeting, but our third graders participated in the Ellis Island simulation as a wrap-up to their immigration unit just a couple of weeks ago. So we hope to have some students join us to tell you about that. But a lot of volunteers and many joyful immigrants who were able to be admitted into the country based on all the work and effort they had put in ahead of time, and some unfortunate immigrants who, either because of health issues or some missing documentation, unfortunately didn't make it in. And so it was a great opportunity for kids to talk about what it might have been like if you had arrived at Ellis Island and weren't able to make it into the country. So we did have a few students who were unfortunately deported during that simulation, but overall I think a great opportunity for kids to learn about other cultures and understand that period in our history when folks were coming in great numbers into this country for a variety of opportunities. So. I want to acknowledge that our school resource officer, Wayne Stevens, now holds the title of detective with the police department. So he remains our school resource officer, but when he is not working in the schools, he is a detective with the PD.
Wow.
Excellent.
We are looking to schedule a training for prospective substitutes or current substitutes. Like many districts in our area, we struggle to find substitutes on a regular basis to fill out staffing needs in our schools. So if you're out there and interested in subbing, please come to the district office and obtain an application. You don't have to already have training. We will train you and support you, and our schools are very welcoming places. We're also looking at some other potential incentives to help make these positions more attractive to people. We know that New Hampshire's unemployment rate is really low, and there aren't people lining up trying to take these positions, but we're looking at the possibility of reimbursing people for their criminal background check after a certain number of days of service to the district, or the possibility of providing a lunch in lieu of some additional payment as a part of their service on those days. But trying to find some ways to incentivize that. But we'll be publicizing a training.
What does a substitute teacher need for background?
Minimum of 2 years of college, and then they have to successfully complete a criminal background check.
So not any specific proficiency?
That's correct. If they're a long-term sub, they have to have a teacher credential. But if for short-term substitute, so to come in and substitute for a day
Really?
in a
Okay.
classroom, all of our subs go through an interview process with a school administrator, obviously, but then they successfully complete the background check. Certainly experience with children and a comfort level with young people helps, but there's no formal training that's required ahead of time.
Do they have to do during that substitute period, present something on a subject? I mean, do they have to put together a
So
lesson
teachers
plan?
leave lesson plans that are already put together and should identify where the materials are and the resources, and here's the sort of flow chart for what to accomplish during the day. Certainly our administrators check in, particularly with our newer subs, to make sure that they have what they need and things are going well, as do teaching colleagues. But it is, not a bad way to spend your day. And yeah, kids fill you up pretty well. So if you have some time and you're at home, please consider that and come attend the training session when we schedule it, because it's not a commitment, but you can come learn about how the day might operate.
It's just me talking again, but I just got to say, there's nothing in this world like the first time you have to walk in and take responsibility for 17 or 18 individuals. Sometimes even more so the younger they get, because they look up at you and there is all expectation that you will drive the boat. And the only thing that I can tell you that was anything even close was getting behind the wheel of a bus, a school bus, with, in my case, only 3 adults. But the 3 adults ran up and down the bus to give me even a small simulation of what it might be like to have 54 screaming children threatening to injure one another or throw things back there or whatever they might be doing, while you're hurtling along at 40 miles an hour trying hard not to run over anything. It's amazing some of the things that we expect to have people to do on a daily basis to help with the operations of this whole thing. It would just blow you. It blew my mind, I guess I will say.
I might be more ignorant of what a substitute teacher needs for qualifications, but perhaps not. Perhaps there are people out there that don't understand what the qualifications are. Maybe, I mean, even people that are retired, perhaps.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you try to get. 'cause
Oh, you
those are
do?
the-
See, I don't.
Those are
I
the
don't-
best ones to get.
I always assumed it was a teacher with a 4-year degree in English that needed to teach an English class.
Again, if it is a long-term substitution where you're
Right.
going to be in there for 4 weeks or longer,
Right.
then certainly we need someone with a credential. But for coming in, a day during a week to fill in for an absent classroom teacher, because the instructional plans are laid out by the teacher, you don't have to have those qualifications.
Wow.
How does it typically work, Meredith? Are you on a list and then you get called, say, the night before? Or
Whenever we know ahead of time, we certainly schedule ahead of time. And sometimes if it's a professional development situation, we might know several weeks ahead of time and try to schedule it with you ahead. In those situations when someone is ill or an emergency occurs, it's a call the night before, or in some cases the morning of. And that our assistant principals make those phone calls to people on the list. And we would know, okay, Mr. Zink's not available on Fridays. I'm not going to call him this week because it's Friday. We do our best to sort of work with that. But we have really very small banks of subs right now, so we'd like to add to those roles.
It would seem very intimidating for a substitute teacher to come in for an 11th grade chemistry class, for example. I mean, what?
So I will say, as a high school teacher, I'm not going to, if I don't know who's coming in to sub for me, and I might know ahead of time that I've got someone with a science background who's going to be coming in because it's a planned day out. If it's an emergency day out, they're not going to be doing a chemistry lab with Bunsen burners running and chemicals out and about. They're going to be doing a safe, structured activity that I've put together ahead of time for such a situation.
Gotcha.
So it might be, doing some reading or a discussion, something that is pre-planned and manageable.
Gotcha. Okay.
And at the junior, senior high level, it may be some more independent work that students are working on, building towards a project or a research project. At the elementary level, it tends to be we're switching gears pretty frequently to keep them active and engaged in the lesson.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Great questions. Sorry for the interruption.
That's quite all right. I went to my first big show on Sunday night, so I want to just compliment both of our Nancy Millers, Miss Courier, Miss Thorell, and Mrs. Lazarus for their efforts in coaching, and again, takes a lot of volunteers and tremendous parent support to get those kids picked up when they stay late after school and put in the practice time and cheering them on. But the bleachers were full. I think it was standing room only in the junior senior high gym on Sunday night, so we appreciate all of that, and it's fun to see students able to shine in different ways. So great opportunity, and I think the traveling group is out tomorrow visiting some schools around the area. What else? Filing deadline for school district offices is tomorrow at 5 p.m. I believe we have a filing for each of the positions, moderator, clerk, and treasurer, and 2 candidates for school board. And what else is on my list? I knew I brought these. I will be out of the office Monday attending a legislative session with School Administrators Association. We anticipate that the governor will be there, and both House and Senate education chairs will be there, just talking about upcoming legislation. So it's a great opportunity to sort of hear perspectives and where things stand. On that note, I was informed today about a bill that's coming forward, sort of proposing broadening Medicaid to schools so that it is extended to students, not only to students on IEPs, but other students who might have qualifying conditions who would be eligible for Medicaid subsidies. So that could be beneficial, particularly as we've heard some rumblings that Medicaid funding at the federal level could have some changes ahead. So that's one we'll definitely watch. And bond info sessions. Again, we have deliberative session Saturday, informational session on February 15th at, did you say 9 a.m.?
9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Here?
And then we're, yes, here at Town Hall in the auditorium, and I'll be looking to schedule one probably that first week of March, that first full week of March, the week that you just scheduled the board meeting for. We'll get that information out once that date is finalized. And then, if the board is willing, I was going to move to a financial report, but we can.
Yep.
We should ask one question. Who's going to be at the meeting in Concord?
It's New Hampshire School Administrators is sponsoring it, so it's the governor will be there, and both the
So you
House
can
and
do some
Senate
speaking
finance
and ask some
chairs.
questions about who he's appointing to these different positions?
Well,
Do you think that will
we
come
know
up?
who the recommended commissioner is, Frank Edelblut, and we expect that the Executive Council will meet again in a couple of weeks.
And I would
review
encourage
that.
everybody to call your representative. I encourage everybody to call the Executive Council if you have any opinions on that whatsoever, either if you're for or against, because they love to hear from their constituents, from their people.
Just
If you need
one
numbers, let me know.
One more item, and I won't read this letter publicly, but I have for you as board members a copy of the letter. But I received notice from our Director of Special Education, Jean Parsons, that she will be retiring at the end of this year. And so I appreciate her thoughtfulness in giving us that notice at this juncture so that it gives us great lead time to be able to advertise for the position and hire a replacement for her, but allow also for a good opportunity for transition. This is a very important job in district, and I want to thank Jean personally for her support and advocacy for children and families in Newmarket through the years, and she will be missed. So, and I know we recognize folks at a later time, but we probably should take a.
Mary, can I just the Medicaid thing? What's the applicability of that? What is? Can you, I don't know much about that.
So right now, the school district receives reimbursement from Medicaid for students on individual education plans who receive Medicaid-eligible services. So occupational therapy could be a Medicaid-eligible service, depending on the nature of your disability. Speech therapy could. If you're a student on a 504, counseling might be a service that is then available for reimbursement, which currently is not to the schools. So that's one way that it might be broadened. Psychologist services. There could be transportation services that came up. Those are a couple off the top of my head.
Okay. Any other questions about Medicaid or the legislative conversation? We'll talk again about building aid in a moment. So before us, we have the matter of our Director of Student Services. In order to formalize that and move forward with the process to set ourselves up for next year, I'd entertain a motion to accept the resignation for retirement of Jean Parsons.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Mr. Zink. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the resignation as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. And we certainly will anticipate seeing Jean among our retirees in the spring to be celebrated for their work and contribution to the Newmarket schools.
So as we transition to Lisa's financial update, I just want to acknowledge that we received a check in the amount of, actually not a check, but of $540,931.79 from the state of New Hampshire, and a letter to that, which I will just read so that people have the information. In accordance with HP 2, Chapter Law 276-141, School Building Aid, Alternative School Building Aid, you've been awarded building aid in the amount of $540,931.79, which is 30% of the requested and approved eligible amount of $1.8 million. And that is for the life safety work that was done over the past couple of years. And again, I just want to acknowledge the efforts of a lot of people who helped pull that together, including Chris Andriski, Pat Ballantyne, Chris Mazzoni, our fire chief, Rick Mulaski, Lisa and her team in the finance office. So a lot of folks put a lot of effort into that, including even Michael Cahill, our legislative representative, in sort of pursuing that. And we appreciate the DOE's timely review of our application for that. And Lisa will talk about what our options are for the use of those funds, which we reviewed with Nathan in a meeting with the chair.
I think as a board member, and for the board, we just have to thank the administration at that time, who we had here. If they hadn't pursued it and followed it through, we wouldn't have gotten that. And I just can't say it enough that we appreciate everybody, all hands on deck during the last 2 years.
Pat and Chris, especially Chris Andriski, there was a lot of moving parts at that point in time, and this was a deadline, and they got it in, and then followed up. And just so the public understands too, that it's this state emergency aid fund is different than the school building aid fund, upon which there's a moratorium right now, and all of the work that's been done in the past several years is, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's north of $2 million, which includes the elevator. All of that didn't qualify as life safety or emergency aid stuff. So that's why we didn't get a third of everything. We got a third of, and that was a lot of the back and forth after the application to determine precisely what was life safety qualified. So
about 30% of a little better than 1.8 million.
Yep.
There's nothing, I just
I'll take it.
can't say enough how much we appreciate the work that went into making sure that $540,000 finally came down. Because in an age of downshifting and pushing it to the local, the state is not sending any love like this in our direction, and so this is a real win. So anyway, but you've got some some information to share about that.
Yeah, and I just appreciate the focus of our outgoing commissioner to make sure it happened as well through their administration, because it could have landed anywhere. But the 30%, I just want to say, is based on a RSA that looks at the rankings for median family income and equalized value, and the ADM, the average daily membership of residents in the district. So the 30% isn't just, it isn't the number for all districts. That's just happened, how it came about. And looking at the options we have here, these funds are for past, it's a reimbursement for past expenses. So really, there's only a couple options, is to return the dollars as revenue in the fund balance, or the district has voted in the past for a permission to use a fund balance retention, and 2.5% can be retained, which would be $331,097 because of that voter approval. So we have only a couple options to return it, and it will be money that will be used to offset taxes. So if we all remember, we have certain appropriations, we can't overspend our appropriations, so it's not like that money can be used and now we can spend another $500,000 for something. But that money can be used to defer and reduce taxes. So we'll have a decision in the fall when we go to set the tax rate. If we hold back a portion of that, then it can help for the future for reducing taxes for the following year. So we can hold back 2.5%, retain it per the
And you can
lot, or
calculate
return
that
it
rate.
all. And it will
You
be
can
at the end of
calculate
June.
that already, so that you
Yeah, when I
know
get into June.
that the max is roughly 330 that
Yeah.
we could keep
It's-
in June.
It's
at the end of
absolutely
June.
331,097
Right.
because it comes about by where last year's assessments
Assessment was.
were. And so DRA, when we set the tax rate for 2016, which we just did, they provide on the actual tax rate setting information what that net assessment is and what the 2.5% is. So we'll always know, so it's the year before, it's end of the year. So when I end this year, there'll be a number, and we can choose to retain
So
that or not.
we've got on the ballot, we've got a budget increase that was something we worked hard at to get it down, but it's still greater than we'd like. And we've got the project that we're hoping that the community will support. And there's a tax impact of the project in the first year, which is an interest-only payment, likely, the way we anticipate it might be funded. And then another tax impact when the principal comes online in the subsequent year. So there's tax impact that we could help offset in the next 2 years. And so what you're saying is we could keep some piece of it using that retainage mechanism that we voted in but haven't used. If we save that whole roughly $330,000, what's that tax impact of that today?
Well, based on the value of
Today.
today is about 45 cents per thousand.
So that would be in the fall of 18, and that would leave, out of that 540, that would leave 200 and something, 210?
About 210.
And that would add to this year's fund balance, and what's that worth on the tax rate?
That's about 29 cents, 30 cents.
Okay.
So 45 cents
I mean, you
for
could
the
let it, you
future,
could
30
let it
cents for
all
now.
fall to this year's fund
All of it
balance,
is about 75 cents.
75 cents?
Yeah.
Or you can hold over legally up to maybe 45 cents of it to help in the second year, 30 cents of relief against the bond issue this year, of another 45 the sub.
So if we have no other savings, everything
Right.
equal, that money equates to a certain savings. So it can all go back to the taxpayers at once, but then you have to think about the fluctuation, and you're going to give them a big savings, and then you have to make up that difference in the future, because you're not going to have that money, so you got to make up that difference, and then you do it again.
That is
So
a-
having
that
that
does help you
2.5%.
I mean, we've talked about trying to stagger into this bond impact.
Right.
So that softens it up, you know, if you just took that 30 cents, right now the estimate on the warrant is what, $1.30?
$1.33 for the.
So that makes it
bond.
103. The next year, you'd see the remainder of the $3 and change come in, but you
Yep.
could soften that by another 45 cents, so that then the next year, instead of you see less impact the first couple of years, and then realize it, so you break it into 3 years of impact as opposed to 2.
More gradual
Yeah.
step up.
More gradual.
More gradual step
So
up.
I think I know the answer to this question, but ideally, the value of 500,000 over 20 or 30 years is a lot. Does the RSA preclude us from reducing the bond amount proportionally?
Yes,
It
yeah.
says so?
It's-
There's no
well-
wiggle room, or there's no agency we can appeal to, or is that?
Well, you are, in fact, by returning that, reducing the tax implications in total, so your bond is that, but it's going to be net less this other amount.
What I'm saying is
But to go and change the appropriations for that, no. Because
you can't do that.
the RSA, retaining fund balance does not increase your appropriations. So your fund balance does not increase your appropriation. We cannot pay any money or incur any liability for any purpose in excess of the amount appropriated. So you have your transfer authority, but your overall appropriations, if you have that bond and you're going to lower it, the 500,000 isn't money you're now spending. It was a reimbursement for prior expenses. So it's not like a donation or.
I would generally give the answer, this is a revenue to be received.
Yeah.
That can't become expenditure. But I would suggest that we've got, it's Thursday night, there's one business day left. It might be worth, if we haven't already, a quick phone call to bond counsel to prepare them for the conversation, because if they could dream up, it has to come back in and go in the pocket, as a revenue that's unanticipated and a reimbursement of past expense. It has to come in and be taken and put in the pocket, and then you can get the approval to spend more. Trying to impact the bond article with it is saying, I'm going to have a revenue that I'm never going to see as income. I'm just going to offset some of my spending.
spend less.
And the two have to. I can't spend less. I have to say I'm going to spend the same amount. I have to see this coin in the pocket separately. It's just the way the gross appropriation laws work. But bond counsel might be able to dream something up.
Well,
it's worth at least
it's
running
kind
it by
of
them.
in a parallel. If you were to close your capital reserve and then restate it as something else, you have to explain to people, I've taken that money back, it's in the tax, I saved it, but then I have to put it back out there. So the 540 has come in, we've saved it, it's in our fund balance, but you have to put it back out there. So you have to show you're going to spend it again. So you can't just take it off of the expenses, the appropriations. You're bringing in the revenue, you're saving it there, but then you have to show you're going to go spend it. So how are you going to spend it? Still on the bond. So I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, it's an accounting
Yeah, I mean,
nuance.
it's
I think
about
that's
gross
hard to
appropriation,
express.
Gross appropriation.
Again, bond counsel might chase it differently.
Yeah, and the only reason I ask
It's
is
worth-
not to create controversy, but because the notion is, if we had if the rules allow for it, if it was appropriate, then it's a consideration, but if it doesn't, it doesn't, so.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, the max that it would allow would be that 301,970.
Yeah, and these-
And the simple theory is that, I mean, if you reduce the bond by, 500, by whatever that amount is.
301.
Yeah. Then, you're not paying interest on that amount over 30, 20 years or whatever we wind up doing. Just a thought, but if we can't do that, then we.
We didn't raise and appropriate the 540, I guess is all I could say.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to.
I hear, I
don't wanna
get what you're
chase.
saying. If I could think of a way,
That presumes we can do it, so, but if we can't, it's just a nice thought.
Here's the challenge. I think the rule that needs to be heard is this has to come back as money received to reduce tax impact, because the money that we spent, the 1.8 that it reimburses against, we raised that from taxpayers and spent it. So this has to come back to offset that.
Won't reducing the bond by 500 reduce tax impact?
It will, but in
But it's in
a
a
future
different
period,
fiscal
and
year.
it's different.
Okay.
There are some creative ways that you might be able to spin this.
What you just said makes sense.
but the problem with some of the creative ways is, you're talking about creating additional warrant articles and adding some other things, and they just confuse and leave people thinking. So keeping it simple, but I understand the desire to try to reduce the bonding by $500,000, come on.
Well, if you reduced
That's
it,
why I think bond counsel should take a quick peek and offer up any advice that they've got, or any
I think that
suggestions.
would be good. And, and I don't want to curb the enthusiasm here, because this is awesome, no matter whether we get it as we think we're gonna, or it's
It
great.
provides tax relief.
Absolutely.
I guess
Bottom
my
line.
final word on it is, if you reduced it, you have to still spend it. So how do you spend it? You have to put it back in. That's, because you could reduce it, but you have to spend it.
Follow through on that. If you reduce what?
If you reduce the bond, you still need the $540,000, correct? You're going to spend it. You're just using that money to
He's just trying to use
offset
it
it.
up front to reduce the interest.
But you're still going to spend $540. So how do you
Not
appropriate?
necessarily if the project comes in less than the full bond amount.
Okay, well then, that would be anyways. That would happen anyways, but the full bond, you still have to appropriate it.
So let's,
I don't know.
I think with bond counsel's support, we can
Yeah.
talk through some scenarios that, again, they get kind of convoluted, but in anticipation of council having to help us answer the question on Saturday, we'll prep them and have
You'll
that.
be prepared.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I think the thing to cash in here is, number one, 540,000, but number two, the whole discussion of, assuming nothing else happens, or there's no other change that we dream up, the board will have to decide as you approach the end of June and of the end of the year, what do you want to, do you want to use that, do you want to use that law that we engaged
Right.
once before with a warrant article and that the
Rather
community approved? Do you want to hold back some piece to modify that?
To level it
You make
out.
that decision in June, so.
Pass those down.
Yes.
Getting our
Are you going to come and stand before us?
quarterly.
Yeah, I'm going to stand out there, I'm going to have a public comment about that. And I'm going to bring audio visuals.
Oh, good. I would hate them.
It's about time.
Look, Mr. Lunny brought something to look at, so he doesn't have to say as much. Please.
So it's been a little while since I came back and looked at the financials with you. When I had first started, I had a conservative view, and things weren't encumbered, and now we've got a better view on things. And overall, we're slightly to the negative, but I'm not alarmed, because, once again, we do have capital reserves. I'd prefer not to have us tap into those, but also there's things still we don't know between now and the end of the year. Is our substitute rates going to be high? What is really going to happen with our repair and maintenance? Actually, we have some savings in that area, not from repair and maintenance, but if we look at the 2,600 in general is where we plan to have our the facilities position come in, and depending on the timing of that, we're not going to have a full effect for that. We have some known savings in fuel oil and electricity, and those carried into next year's budget as well. But so there's savings in that line. The major issue has been in the special ed area, services required for students that weren't anticipated when the budget was first put together, as well as in the technology area.
That's the one that surprised me.
Technology was the
Yeah.
security and safety things that were approved, so.
No longer
Yeah,
surprised.
and we're looking,
We did it.
And he's got money and we've never touched it.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
and
We tried
and
to
I'm
leave this-
hoping if we can have this, then we won't have to use those reserves, because if you recall, we plan to use them for next year's budget, so we want
It was
to try
just
to keep them.
the name of it was tricking me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So on the second page, I put some explanations, so you'll see the 2230 is the last thing in that additional technology video equipment that was approved, that put that into the red.
By video equipment, you mean security
Oh,
cameras?
yeah,
Buzzer
yeah,
systems.
yeah. But mostly across the board are changes in elections for insurance and just staffing changes, really, things that can't always be predicted when we do the budget now for the following year.
On the 2,900,
So that no longer is being used. It had been in the original budget, and then it got allocated across. That's where all the benefits
Yeah.
had been.
So where do I see it now? Where is it?
It's across all the numbers. It's built into your 1,100, your 1,200. There was
So
a
if you look at
transfer.
regular education, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah, so look at the first column. There's an original total budget.
Yep.
And now there's a
Show up
current
there.
total budget. It's all in those changes across the board.
Okay.
And
Were
the
there
other
any-
difference has to do with money that has come in from capital reserves, if we look at the building improvement line. So there's...
Were there any surprises in the benefit area? Or is it coming in pretty much as we expected?
Oh, there's a number of changes in elections, so
No,
that's
no,
why.
I mean program changes. Was there any surprise in terms of? a
No, it's
premium
just really
change?
people's elections, changes, choices.
Gotcha. Okay, great,
But other than that, no.
because that's huge.
Yeah, and coming in new, there were a lot of changes to get up to speed to build into the next year's budget. So I can tell you there were a lot of things that
job.
changed in staff. Even the number of staff changed. We
This is
also
wonderful.
have in there under school board, the 2,300, we have engineering sitting there right now, but we're offset by some of the severance that was budgeted and not required.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. Just continue to monitor it and see there.
This is very helpful.
Yeah, it's very comforting.
Well, then we have to remember, we have the underground tank to still address. It hasn't been encumbered. We're working to get better numbers on that, and we'll know that by the end of the last quarter of the year. We'll make sure that gets encumbered. So, if there are any questions on any
Any
of
other
it.
questions?
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Want to talk, keep on going, talk program studies? Mr. Andriski will join us.
Should all have a copy, correct? Yeah. So I'm just going to highlight it. I'm not going to go through all the 60 pages for you. I'll just highlight some of the important parts and then some significant changes for this year. I would start out on page 10. That's our graduation requirements for the high school. And you can see 28 and a quarter credits. Once you get into high school, there's the possibility to get 32 credits for what we offer, but you can go above and beyond with extended learning opportunities or other types of classes that kids can take. So we do 28 and a quarter so that when they become seniors, they can have an off period. We've used that model, and it puts responsibility back in our seniors. And there has to be a requirement for them to have that free period. And 95% of those kids are meeting that requirement because they want to get out of school and have free time and lunch. So we're a little bit more stringent than most area schools. We require 4.5 credits for the English, and that's because we require writing, which we started 2 years ago, and we've seen our writing scores go up at the SAT and ACT level. Mathematics is 4, which is pretty much unheard of in high schools. Most high schools it's 3. But you'll see that in the program of studies when we get into the mathematics part, which is in page 34 through 39. We're creating a new class because our students are demonstrating that they're pushing through the math curriculum. So we're actually creating a new pre-calculus level 6 honors class because kids are getting ready for the calculus A-B. So it's a credit to what we did with our math program when we started block scheduling. Our math scores are going up significantly, and that's being proven on our college and career readiness scores, our ACT, Aspire scores. So our math program is really starting to soar from the work that we've been doing.
So 8th grade night was just,
Yep.
8th grade parent night was just last night, maybe? So we've got a block, A day, B day,
Yep.
algebra, both days.
Correct.
We do the same thing with geometry?
No.
So it's just Algebra 1?
It's Algebra 1 and below, so pre-algebra and Algebra 1, but we're having less and less kids take out pre-algebra
Yeah.
because we teach pre-algebra, really, that's your accelerated 7th grade class, right? And then the 7th grade curriculum. And then 8th grade is pre-algebra, and any kid that's accelerated is Algebra 1, and they get 2 periods a day. So with that and then the requirements that we'll go over in this program of studies, it's really, it's really standards-based, but we don't grade it standards-based, so that kids are having to demonstrate proficiency before they can move on. And we've understand that skill, and you're seeing more and more kids not having to take a required math class in college because they've already met the requirements when they leave Newmarket, which has been the goal of our program of studies for the last 3
You made
years.
the comment about math. Is that part of it, the fact that you've doubled down in the early
Yeah.
early
And we've
part of high
looked at,
school with
yeah.
more attention?
And we've identified those weaknesses, and kids have to demonstrate the competency through a math lab so that
Okay.
they have the dedicated skill to be able to push on. Yeah.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much.
So, as you can see, it's pretty standard for the rest. 3 in science, 3 in social studies, and new law came out that civics and economics had to be taught, and we've been doing that for years. Half a credit of technology education, half a credit of fine arts, half a credit of health, 1 credit of PE, half a credit of career development, which is really a quarter credit, and then senior seminar, which is a class that all seniors have to take, where we teach public speaking skills, presentation skills, really those collaboration skills. Again, life skills, getting ready for college, and then life beyond, and then 10.75 electives. And we're at the luxury that we host virtual high school. We've done that for 15 years, which offers another 1,000 opportunities to kids, as well as VLAX courses. So even though we're a small school, the students in Newmarket actually probably, because of virtual high school and VLAX and SST, have a greater offering than most students in the Seacoast area. Turn you over to page 11. That begins when we do our scheduling. We talk to kids starting in 8th grade, and met with Mr. Pavlidis this week. We did all of the high school meetings to talk about program of studies and what classes they should be taking, but it really starts in 8th grade when we meet with the 8th grade students and get them to start thinking about, where do you want to go after high school? What do you want to go into? Biomechanics? Do you want to get into veterinarian? Do you want to get into be a teacher? And so that's called the career cluster, and it helps formalize how we're going to structure out the next 4 years of their life. Internships, are we heavy in math, are we heavy in science, are we heavy in English, based on their career interest, because they do a test in 8th grade to help them identify that, and then we help schedule classes so that kids can really meet the career aspirations that they have, so they're ready for those career aspirations when they leave Newmarket Junior Senior High School. Next page I'd highlight is page 22. Talked about virtual high school. You can see on 22 and 23 the number of different offerings that we can offer to our kids. And these classes are all online. And the reason that we offer virtual high school is because we have a teacher in our building who is part of virtual high school 1 period a day. She actually teaches students across the world, not just in the United States, but across the world. And that's in her physics class. So when you have a teacher, that allows us to open up all of these different opportunities, and we get a number of seats each semester, 24 seats, that kids can take extra different classes. So a student might come in and might be well-versed in French 4. Well, we don't offer AP French. They can take it through virtual high school. And we've had a number of kids that have done that.
What was your experience with regard to the 25 seats? Do we fill them? Do
Yeah.
we use them?
Yeah.
I mean, are they standing in line waiting for those every year?
Not really, because the schedule that we have, because you have to take, if we offer a class that's required
You
for
have to take it,
graduation, we have to take it in our building.
Yeah.
That's kind of been our policy. But then kids that want more. And, we've been fortunate enough with those 50 seats to be able to find it between that and VLAX.
Perfect.
Yeah.
These are elective possibilities.
They can be, unless a kid can't fit it into their schedule, and then it can become a core class. If a student's taken SST, and we've had students who have been skiers in the past, and they've had to get out of school early, we've been able to work in a VHS class that we can come there. So they take English through VHS while they're skiing and not coming to school, and then for that duration, because they're a competitive skier. Again, being in a small school, doing individual learning plans for every kid, you can use VHS to become that school if a kid's not in school for a duration of time.
But can I use one of these as as part of my?
You can, if we find that it can't be, say you can't get an English 12. Your schedule doesn't allow that because you're in AP honors for calculus and for chemistry, and you go to SST because you're going to be an engineer. Can't fit in English with us. Then we could use VHS as your English class. But if you can fit it into your schedule, you have to take it in our building.
Gotcha.
But we will supplement it if a kid can't get that.
Got it.
Yeah, correct. 24 is your VLAX classes, which is very similar. And we've been using VLAX more and more for credit recovery, competency-based. So, we did away with summer school about 3 years ago just because we were doing it in-house. But this allows that student who's fallen a little bit behind, or maybe that senior that's on the cusp of not graduating, they can take VLAX and do the competencies and demonstrate that competencies through our teacher and through their teacher to be able to be online for graduating or finishing up in August so that they can graduate before the school year.
So we don't, summer school is no longer...
No. The need is not there, yeah.
Really?
I would tell you the number, since we've gone to a block schedule and we have advisory built in, the number of student failures is dropped dramatically.
Wow.
Next page is, let me go to page 34. And this gets into math. I talked a little bit about it. But 34 goes over our different math offerings. Once you turn to page 35, this talks about the different criteria that you have to be able to get into the different levels in classes, which is different, and this is more of your competency-based education, having the prerequisite and the knowledge, and not just getting a C and getting through the class, but we want you to demonstrate that you have the skills to be able to move on. If you don't have the skills in a mathematics class, you're not going to be able to go from a pre-algebra to an algebra class. And that's where, public high schools were failing, is that kids were being passed along and then getting to college, and then the first class that they were failing, college mathematics, because they weren't prepared. So our approach 5 years ago was to change that. We want kids being able to come out and demonstrate that they have the knowledge and the skills to be able to continue in their classes. So it's pretty broken down, and kids fight every day to push up and pass, to get into that next level. The next area that I'd highlight for you, because I just talked about that honors pre-calculus class that we've offered because of the number of kids that are at that level now, at the high school level. Let me take you to page 42. And I'm going to bring you to the end of the page on page 42. This is under physical education. We created a new class. And I'm pretty proud working with being the department chair for the wellness department this year, and we'll be turning that over to one of the teachers next year. But we created a class that we want to offer next year, and it's called Unified Physical Education. It's a way to get kind of adaptive PE, but it's also to do that partner participant model. And if you have not been to one of our unified sports, I would tell you to go, because no matter what mood you're in that day, I went on Friday with my daughter, and she said, "Dad, they're cheering every time both teams score." And I said, "Yeah, isn't that the way it's supposed to be?"
That's right.
And she's like, "This is great." We stayed the whole game, and watching those kids, and some of our most experienced athletes who aren't good athletes in that sport were out there playing with kids that have never had that opportunity. It was amazing. So working with the PE department this year and the wellness department at the junior senior high school, we wanted to go to that model where kids who kind of struggle with physical education, maybe they just don't like PE, they don't want to change. Going to a participant and a partner model where that partner might be someone who's really good at sports, or wants to get into coaching, or wants to get into working with people in any capacity. It's going to get into that mentoring role. So it's a class that we're offered. It's the first time we've offered it. Don't know what kind of response we'll get when I talk to all the different grade levels. Kids are like, "Oh, it's kind of neat." So there's no more pressure for me to be in competitive PE where I might not be able to have those athletic skills, but I can take this and take it at my level and actually get some of those physical education skills and requirements out of this class. So that's a brand new class that we're offering for this year.
I'd like to. I went to the game that was at Exeter, and I had the best time. So if you do get a chance to go, you should go. And I came home and I said to my senior, "I wish we had this. I wish we had this, because this would have opened up a whole different ball game for him. He, like you said, coaching, or just working. Somebody wants to be a teacher. I am so proud that we have this. I think that so proud of you guys for bringing this forward.
So
good.
It's part of the work that we did, but it's really the PE teachers and the
Yeah.
health teacher recognizing that this is something that should have been done years ago, and we've got the talent and the students
I'm
to
so
do it.
proud
So
of you. I love it.
hopefully I'll be back here next year reporting that this is something that's filled, and we have to turn kids away because it's so filled.
I love it.
Next thing I'll highlight you on is page 46 when we get into science. And halfway through, if you look at section 746, STEM. So it's a new high school offering, And it's something that we've been able to do limitedly, but as we look at the possibility of a new facilities and what those spaces will be, we are creating that class so that we're ahead of the curve, so that when we have the opportunity to move into a new space, we're already going to have the curriculum built to be able to run it even at a higher capacity. So that STEM class, it's an elective class at this point, but again, getting in those science, that technology, that engineering, mathematics as a class, hands-on, building things, breaking it down, that inquiry-based type of model. So that's a new elective that we built for this year as well. And then the last page that I'll bring you to is page 52. It covers both of the last topics I'll talk about. You'll see in there we've got our second section of Mandarin Chinese. As you know, this year we only had one high school offering, but as now this program begins to build, next year we'll be offering Mandarin Chinese 2. And now French will be alleviated, except through VHS for those kids who would be in French 3. We do have kids who are in French this year who take it through VHS, and it's monitored through our Mandarin Chinese teacher. So that would be the next step, and then the year after will be the final phase out of French, and Mandarin Chinese will offer Mandarin Chinese 3. And then after Mandarin Chinese is our partnership with Seacoast School of Technology, which is a fantastic opportunity for our kids for vocational center. Again, I can't speak more proudly about the work that our kids do. We have 67 kids going there, which out of the 6 surrounding towns is the highest population per student population of kids going to take that opportunity. So it's something that we take full advantage of in Newmarket.
I don't want to say it one more time. I know that once upon a time, we were talking about another community and the changes that we might anticipate in Newmarket, and one of the biggest potential losses was the fact that the cultures in the two communities were so different with regard to career and tech ed. And the reality is, if anybody's got kids out there, or even if you don't, you're just tuning in, this is technologies. This school, this is not mom and dad's Voc. This isn't, the tech school, you know what I mean, of old. These are powerful college preparatory. I mean, they are making live tissue in biotechnology, have been for a decade up there in that program. I mean, right along with marketing, with careers in ed, with health sciences. I mean, this is a college preparatory opportunity that really fleshes out what our kids get. Absolutely. And it's just, I mean, you had a graduating class a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. You had over half the class that had certificates from SST programs. Right. And I thought, I mean, none of the schools around us are thinking like that, and I think it really does a lot for our kids, and I appreciate that you and the team at the high school, I know Mr. Pav's been an advocate. We've just done the right thing advocating for our kids that this is a good element for them to consider in their program. So keep up the good work. It's great.
It's also, this says, when you hear families say, well, they don't have enough offered at the school, give this to them. This is...
Well, that's one of the things that I think makes Mr. Pavlidis such a great guidance counselor, and you're going to miss that next year when he retires, is that he will find a creative way to make something work for that kid. And if their interest is in pianos, he's going to find a class that they can have in pianos to make it work, because we're a small school and we find the resources to do it. So that's the bonus of being in a school like this, is that you can make it work. And we really, truly do an individual learning plan for every kid. He meets with every kid. Where do you want to go? How do we get there? What's the classes you want to take? And talks about levels and speed and rate and how they're going to be taken. So that's one of the benefits of being in this town.
And he talks to parents.
And he communicates with parents, yes. So.
But Commissioner Tracy, I mean, we're 2 commissioners back, I guess, or pretty close. Commissioner Tracy talked about follow the child and moving in the direction of having an individualized learning plan for every kid. I mean, we're not. This is as close as anybody's getting. I mean, you're there. I mean, we're really working hard for every child, and that's
a good thing to bring to Concord.
Personalization, and I think when we talk about school choice, we really mean choices for individuals.
For individuals.
And I think we're doing our best to kind of customize the learning experience for kids. Just one thing I wanted to point out, it mentions on page 20, and you didn't highlight this, but post-secondary school and college agreements, chance to take a course at a technical school or college while still studying as a student at Newmarket Junior Senior High School. So I don't know if you want to touch upon that at all.
Yeah, so we have the ability, we actually, Running Start, where kids can take credit and then they can transfer that, Great Bay, UNH. We have had kids that have tested out of certain criteria and have taken classes at UNH. So we do have that partnership, and again, it gets back to that personalization, right? They've tapped out of everything we can offer in here. So what do we look at? We look at our communities, colleges in the area, and they're able to take that, or even a class online, which we've been able to do. So, yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Meredith. Mr. Pavlidis, again, works, tremendously. And again, that Running Start class we do have as part of our TAC math class. These kids would have had to take a math class when they went to college. By taking TAC math, they get that college credit in our building, and that way they don't have to take math as a prerequisite when they first get into the community college.
Which is what, $700 class, $800 class?
Or $1,500 class. If you go to the university, right? You get it for, what, $150 here through this program.
Yeah.
It's a great,
it's
a great head start on the future for a lot of
helps.
students, yeah.
But you get better math.
That was a
though.
question.
As a school board member, I got to learn a lot more about this stuff than buildings and stuff. But if I go to page 48 and I see course 841 street law, that's something that we provide.
Yeah.
Let's say there's two guys.
Yep.
Two people. Do we do it?
No, typically not. Typically, we try to run a class of no less than 10 kids.
So, and I remember seeing a schedule at one time, years and years ago, that showed how many kids per class and so forth. Are these generally ones that at least 10 students would like to participate in?
Yeah, generally. So you've got the whole course offerings. We don't run all these courses every year because you might not get any kids signing up for anything. So like one that's happened is our business classes. We haven't offered a business class in 3 years because they take it over at SST. Yeah. But you still have to offer them in your course of studies to be accredited through DOE.
But and I probably should do this offline.
Street law might not run this year.
Great.
But if we had, 3 kids who were exceptionally interested in it and it just didn't fit into their schedule and they weren't going to be able to take it a subsequent year, we might figure out a way, as Chris said, to customize that and do an independent study with those kids to pursue that.
So as I understand that. So looking this over, we're offering courses to comply with the breadth of course offerings that are required.
Correct. Yeah.
But if I were to look at this and say, okay, I got that, but how many of these are we really teaching? How would I find that?
So I could give you that number based on what we offer in our schedule this year. I don't have that at my fingertips, but I could, very easily count the number of classes.
And every year it's different. Every year there's different offering depending on.
And then also, so here's the thing is that our high school numbers are starting to grow because that's when the bubble years are coming in.
Yep.
So now your high school electives start to grow. So some of the classes we couldn't offer when we had a graduating class of 50, with these graduating, this class coming in of 90, and we're graduating 70, 20 extra kids, that's going to be another set of elective classes that we might be able to offer.
One last question. So we have a course here called Movies That Matter on page 32. And it sounds kind of abstract to me. Is it here because, why is it here? And I'm picking a bad one, perhaps.
Sure.
Maybe 30 people go to Movies That Matter, I don't know. What is it for? Why do we?
So that's part of our English. It's a great question.
Okay.
Why is it offered?
Really
Right?
good question.
What does it deal with? So any class that we offer, we have a curriculum that's online. So you can see the entire curriculum that we're going to teach.
Newmarket does.
Yes, we do.
Our curriculum.
Our curriculum.
Gotcha.
That we teach.
Okay.
And it's online. It's online right now that you can go see Movies That Matter and see what they actually teach. That class is for that student that's a gifted writer or wants to get into art or some combination of 4. So there's an extra elective for that kid to come in and take that class. And what it really is a comparison. They'll take movies, and it might take movies from the 70s and compare it to the movies of 2012. What are the same themes that we're offering? How did they attack that movie? What are the differences in that movie?
How does the director shape your viewpoint?
Yeah.
But there's got to be 6 of us that want to do that.
Yeah.
Or at 8.
At least 10 is what we look for.
So,
Or those kids this year have to take a different class.
I guess I don't understand the concept.
Well, so you're going to ask us to approve this tonight.
Right.
This is the program of studies for next school year.
Correct.
You're about to launch this in front of your high school incoming for next year and say, register for your classes of interest.
Yep.
And at the end of that, then you'll say, nope, not doing the movie thing, not doing street law, not doing, because nobody signed up for those.
I got you, it's an offering.
That's-
I got it, I got it.
Yeah.
It's my, what's it called?
Individualized IEP?
It's- I what?
IEP.
It's my plan.
Your education plan.
Individual
God.
learning.
So you pick it, so Alex, so you know if there's only 7 kids that want movies that matter, and we can't offer that, we go to those 7 kids and say, what's your second choice that you can't get there? Now it might be, 3 of them go to street law, and that now gets 10, so now we can offer that class. 'Cause we
Or
have
can I offer that through a different way?
Most of the time, we try to get creative, maybe there's a VHS class that will align pretty closely with that, so they could take that.
And that's okay?
Yeah, or they might be a sophomore, we might say, hey, you can take this as a junior, when it's going to be, why don't we focus on one of your core classes now and not do this
Gotcha.
electives?
Okay.
So Chris, a related question, in terms of staffing, when this all shakes out, we determine which of these, would existing staff take on most of this? Or-
Yeah, it's all existing staff. There's
Really?
no
Okay.
extra staff ever. Because there's only a certain amount of periods a day that these teachers, but they're all certified to teach this.
Got
So
it.
English teacher can teach any one of these classes in the English department.
So movies that matter, is that in the English department?
Correct.
An English teacher has been trained?
Yep. Yep.
Is
That
it,
class.
It aligns with English standards that, you know, so it's communications intensive, you're going to be talking about point of view, you're going to be doing analysis, you're going to be doing a lot of writing.
It's not that they understand movies.
Well, presumably the person who teaches it, you hope, has a particular interest or passion for that topic, right? I mean, if you know, if you're an English teacher and you hate film,
isn't there another layer to this too, which is that one of your English teachers has determined that they've got a particular interest, but even more so, they can rope kids into wanting to come in and write at length about movies a whole lot better than they get them to write about the fence in the pasture. And so this will get them fired up, and I'll get some kids in here for some English. So I'll offer it, and I'll tailor it to movies.
but I, as an English teacher, might say, geez, I really want to do a Shakespeare elective.
Right.
I can't wait. And nobody might sign
Nobody
up
would sign
for
up
it.
for that one.
I think they would.
They used to.
No, they would.
I see.
But
I see. That's really
These are
interesting.
great
It's stuff
questions.
we
This is what we
didn't
should
have
talk
growing
about.
I don't know any, I mean,
Keep asking.
it's not the way I went to school.
We didn't have this, like, this wasn't,
Yeah.
they didn't try to
ask me
rope
what-
kids
They
in.
didn't ask me what I wanted.
And then this is how we build our schedule, Al. This is how we build our schedule every year, based on what we offer,
Yeah.
and how we slot teachers, and where's openings, and what's not conflict. So that's how we get into the school management piece of what the actual schedule is going to look like, knowing that we can't schedule AP US History, because that's when the kids go to SST. So it has to be offered C period instead of A and B when they're at, so that's how, those are the nuances that go into after this is, kids start picking what they want to.
That's my last question. So a 2,000-student school would be more likely to be able to offer movies that matter?
Probably.
it has a
Every
thicker
time.
program of studies.
I'm sorry?
And it probably also has a thicker program of studies because they probably have to offer even more electives to meet the population's needs.
I got you. Okay. It's really cool.
I sat through history of rock and roll last semester. And it was history of rock and roll, from the beginning of rock and roll till present day.
What's a course?
At the school that I work at. And they ran 3 of those.
We offer one, and that's
You
only,
went?
yeah. We did it last year when we went to full-time with the chorus teacher.
I
That's
love
a
that
class that we offer. She teaches keyboarding one semester, and then history of rock and roll the second semester.
Really?
And you know what? And you don't like music, but you like rock and roll, and you learn it. I mean, you have to sit
Or
through.
you don't like history, but you love music, but what a great way to help you better understand
Yeah.
history if that's your passion.
Because you do the different types of music, what was going on that time.
Gotcha.
But again, we didn't have this. You either took English and you learned cursive writing, or you flunked.
But with the other things
Yeah.
that Chris talked about.
No, that's right.
With the other things that Chris talked about in terms of VLAX and virtual high school, I think this is right, that we've sort of closed the gap between high enrollment schools and smaller ones.
Yeah,
You no longer have that limitation. I mean, if you look at the list, of course, and I know this because I'm fresh off of listening to Mr. Pavlidis' great intro last night. and I met with him this morning and
You did?
learned more all about this. But it's amazing how
How
many.
did you happen to learn more about it?
Because he
As a
Just
parent.
they have a high school intro. My daughter's moving up, so
He's trying to get ahead of my kid.
yeah,
Excuse me, second up to Pavlidis.
yeah. Even though-
Clearly, I don't spend enough time in school. Pam, I'll see you in the morning.
I know, Mr. Pav.
You have any observations about this?
Well, scheduling's my favorite part of the year.
Yeah?
Is it?
It is. I told my friends that, and they think I'm really weird because I love scheduling. And I was sad this year when I heard them all get called down to the cafeteria to talk about what their future is going to be, and I was like, I want to do that.
You get to.
Can you talk, yeah, say a little more about that.
Well, because it's just you get to specialize and you get to plan for the future. So, I ended up taking 6 credits worth of sciences in my high school career, which is a lot of sciences.
It's a lot of science.
But that's something that I like, so I chose to fill my whole schedule up that way. And I loved that I could specialize it.
You had a game plan from 8th grade already.
Yeah, no,
didn't you?
'cause
This is how I'm going to do it.
At the very back of the thing, it shows you
Yeah.
year 1,
Scholars.
year 2, year 3,
Yeah.
year 4. And I had that filled in completely 8th grade. It was, yeah.
But you know where you want to be in biology and
Yeah,
science.
and even if you didn't, you could take like a bunch of different electives all over the place to like kind of narrow down that field.
And it looks great on the college application that she took 6 credits. She didn't have to. She went above and beyond, and the way that this school fulfilled it, I think it looks great on a college application.
In the AP class, you get by your knowledge base. You don't elect an AP class.
No, you have to build up to it. So before you take an AP class, you have to take a subsequent class, and you have to reach a certain requirement. So for
Gotcha.
like,
But anybody can take an AP class.
yeah,
Oh, they can.
Anybody.
But you have to take an exam at the end of it. Right?
If you want.
kind of.
If you want the college credits, because our AP courses, again, is a college credit. So
I
we
thought-
had one student that, he only went to college for 2 years?
3 years.
3 years, because he had done all his core classes by the time he left high school. For, what is it, $80? That was what Colin was there, $80 per.
Give or take.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
I thought AP was based on your proficiency.
Anybody can take it.
So those would be classes, that, like, so in Newmarket, if you were in a larger school, you might have a cutoff and say only your top 10% can take AP classes. We don't do that in Newmarket. You know, we offer it to, there's a cutoff. We don't want a kid that's really going to struggle and not going to be able to get there.
Right.
We allow an option that most schools don't. Kids can take an AP class and not have to sit for the exam. And they get honors credit rather than AP credit, which is higher as it goes to your GPA. But they still can push themselves to be able to, in that class, and sit with their peers who are in the top 10% of those classes and gain that knowledge. And now they don't have to take the exam, but we push them to, you know.
Is there a prerequisite requirement to take an AP? I mean, do you have to take?
A lot of it's on teacher recommendation, which it goes on to your assessment scores, your standards. So we know the kids that should be in there based on their assessment scores, but some might not have the work ethic, you know, because it's a lot more work. It's summer work. You know, there's a lot of outside duties for an AP class because there's so much content you have to get through to be able to sit for that exam.
But I think also we work hard not to be gatekeepers in a sense. If you're really passionate about AP art history and you really want to take that, and you have to do that through VLAX, but if you really want to do that, we want to say, look, you know, you're going to have to work harder than you've ever worked. You know, if you're a student who maybe hasn't shown that work ethic, we're going to have a conversation with you, but we're not going to prohibit you from taking it. You're going to be able to have that opportunity because that may be a real passion for your future, and we don't want to limit you.
This is all very eye-opening.
Aren't you looking forward
Yeah.
to, if we could get this passed on March 14th, we could actually focus on this. And you said that, and you're right, this is what we should be looking at.
I think Al wants the sub for movies that matter.
Well, I used to take shop 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Took 'em.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. So, as consistent with our district policy, The program of studies has been presented to us for 17-18 at the high school. I need a motion to approve and accept the program of studies as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. McKinney, second from Mr. Kennison. Is there any other discussion about the program of studies for 2017-18? Hearing none, then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. Chris, thank you very much.
That's much more.
Oh, true.
Oh, beyond true.
Oh, that's great.
Love it.
That's a great idea. Thank you. She would love it. You're right. Hey, in our packets, there was a legislative update from the School Boards Association.
And a template. A letter to the legislature.
Oh. Thank you.
So the template was in there. Here's one for her. Yeah, I sent one around. Go ahead. Here's one for Julia. So they included a template in here about building aid. I'd invite everybody, especially since Al just stepped out, take a minute maybe and skim through what I just sent you, which is a doctored up version of that from us, if it's the pleasure of the board. And maybe while you read, I'll just say out loud for public consumption. What the New Hampshire School Boards Association provided us was a list of updates on legislation in front of the New Hampshire State Legislature this year that may have interest to local school boards because of the impact that they have the potential to incur on our school districts. And so among the things that matter to the School Board Association is the possibility of the moratorium on state building aid being lifted, and they encourage all of their member school boards, us included, to reach out to, in writing, our state senators and representatives to encourage them to work with Governor Sununu to build into the new state budget and into state law a reinstatement of school building aid and an appropriation to fund it. So we took their sample template and dressed it out with some comments about Newmarket, and there it is.
Looks good.
And you're going to send this?
I'll let the superintendent, I'll forward it along, and we can do whatever we do, put on letterhead or whatever, and send it out to those 5 people. We have the State Senator Martha Fuller Clark. We have our own Mike Cahill, Charlotte DiLorenzo, and Ellen Reed here in town, and then Patty Lovejoy, who is a regional district that includes Newmarket. Patty's been in front of us before.
It's a scary time right now for New Hampshire and our educational department. Do we speak of that at all? Are we allowed to speak of that to let our community understand exactly what's happening with Frank Edelbutt?
Blue.
But I think certainly as an individual board member, you have the right to express your concerns, and that's at the that's the chair's decision as to how you want to stray from the agenda.
Then we don't have, but it's Saturday.
No, I mean, so I guess, again, for public consumption, because what we're looking at is paper that people can't hear. The letter in front of us would be, if we voted it, would be the Newmarket School Board, like I said, saying to our state legislators, respectfully request that you work with Governor Sununu to reinstate this. It's, when the moratorium was put in effect, we were headed into the worst economic recession that we'd seen in 75 years. The economic conditions are not the same today. Things are better than they were then. We appreciate the interest and attention that they have paid, our local legislators have paid to our facilities conversation. And certainly we would welcome the opportunity to benefit from state support for building projects, for educational infrastructure, just like all kinds of districts around the state have for years. A year ago, the state was contemplating a $62 million revenue surplus or budgetary surplus. Indications are that this year could look the same. There continue to be signs that there is opportunity for a program of some sort, and we recommend that they take steps to help us make that happen in the state. By the same token, the Newmarket School Board could weigh in on any number of the legislative initiatives that the School Board Association have brought to our attention, or others for that matter. There's one, for instance, like just, play it out. Here's a really interesting one, right? Rather than playing too many politics, let me just say, there's a House bill that has already been heard by the House Education Committee that would require school districts to provide parents with not less than 2 weeks advance, I'm quoting from the legislation, provide parents with, quote, not less than 2 weeks advance notice of curriculum course material used for instruction of human sexuality or human sexual education, end quote. So in some of the conversation about this, it's easy to say, oh, well, of course, we should notify parents if there's a class that we plan to conduct about human sexuality. But the further extension of this could be if in a health class a student raises their hand and asks a question that might head in that direction, you have to do the unthinkable, which is say, we can't talk about that right now, or handle it however. But these are the kinds of legislation that are in front, and you may have all kinds of perspective and opinion. We might have a commonality of opinion, and if we did, we could certainly weigh into the public domain in terms of recommending to our legislators or testifying in Concord. The School Boards Association puts this out for just that reason. They hope that school boards will rise to the challenge of taking a role of advocacy regarding educational affairs in front of the legislature. Some do and some don't. At a meeting today, we talked about what some school boards in the region have started to do and the interest that they've taken because it's such a pivotal time in history and there's so many changes going on. But for tonight, what the superintendent had put before us and I thought was appropriate was for us to take a swing at building aid, because we've been pushing Mike Cahill every time he's in front of us, and he's been pushing us. And I think now is a really important time to advocate for that. So, but obviously the board could. Some school boards, this one may have in the past, have a legislative update item on the agenda, and they routinely, during the course of the legislative cycle, hear information from either a member or from a staff member or from whomever, an update on what the legislation is, and they weigh in on it and take a role.
We may have to start
We've had our hands full with lots of stuff, so that's kind of been a luxury we couldn't afford ourselves.
Yeah.
Moving forward after the 14th of March, hopefully that'll be something that maybe we can talk more about. But there's a lot on our plate regardless.
Yeah, and another opportunity might be simply to meet with our local legislative representatives and just to have a discussion about some of the pieces that are on the plate that you have particular interest in or concerns about.
I would move that we, who's going to sign it? All of us sign and submit this February 2nd letter on building aid to our legislative representatives.
I'm looking for my agenda. Can't find my agenda to write down my notes.
Oh.
Give me 30 seconds, you guys. Here you go. Yeah, no. Mike Kennison and Kim. Kim?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay.
Perfect.
So, is it the pleasure? Should we read it?
Vote it.
You want to read it? Do you want it out loud to the public?
Can we put it in the record?
Yeah, we put it in minutes.
The template was already in the minutes and the full.
Okay, good. So the full thing can be added. Perfect. I've got a motion from Mr. Kennison, a second from Ms. Shelton to approve setting this letter concerning state building aid to our five members of our legislative delegation here from the region. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. So, think about that. There are legislative materials that can be that you can access routinely through the School Boards Association, I think, online. I haven't looked in a while, but I'm pretty sure you can watch them there. And if it's something you want in the future, we can certainly add legislative update or legislative affairs to our agenda.
So are we going to sign this and send it? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
If you have a blank copy, you could
This
sign
one's-
next to names.
This
on it,
needs
and
to
then we
be
can
spell
transmit
checked.
it. Okay.
It does?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Get out. I
We
don't
can
very
sign
often-
it on Saturday.
I don't very often make
That's
spelling
true.
errors.
I could bring a copy on Saturday on letterhead.
I'll email her I'll email you the.
Did you write this?
I took the template, and so
Didn't do a very good job?
I'll blame the template. I'll blame the template. I didn't add much. I didn't add much to it at all.
Last, flip the page over. Into the last,
Needs counting the meeting.
end of the first paragraph. I think you mean modern, not
Modern.
modern.
I didn't. That's not mine.
I didn't
All right. So we're unanimous, and we'll sign that.
Thanks for letting me.
Thanks for doing that. Good stuff.
You want to talk about the policy that was included in the packet?
I would. So included in your packet is a draft policy EEAG, use of private vehicles to transport students. We have had some conversations. We've had a couple of circumstances, and one includes our transition coordinator, and it's come up for individual students in different circumstances as well, but where there may be a need for staff to provide transportation to a child to an internship experience or job shadow on an incidental basis. So it's not a consistent thing, it's an intermittent piece that occurs for kids. And in sort of saying, okay, have we done a motor vehicle background check on this individual? Do we have a copy of their license? Do we know what their insurance stipulates? We went to your policy manual for guidance and discovered that there wasn't a policy in place. So we put this on the table as a first read for tonight for you to review. One change that we would recommend that you consider would be the liability insurance amount. It's listed here as $500,000. I would say that is unusual
Most carry 3.
coverage. Usually it's $300,000 on an individual's insurance, and so I would ask you to consider that potential change, but otherwise to sort of review that. It's very clear we don't send students on school errands, and it's also only on an incidental basis. And again, the person has to have a valid driver's license, current New Hampshire inspection sticker, the appropriate insurances, and we do a background check essentially on the person's motor vehicle record.
So the one thing that I don't see here, that I don't know that it needs to be stated for our policy, except that maybe it wants to be there for the benefit of the potential employee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure when I've asked Primex about this, not that we're covered with Primex, but let's say the pool, that the pool would say, if you engage them to be a driver, meaning, okay, you're authorized, take that student, drive them there, that from a liability perspective, Primex is involved, and here we say that the district will be in excess of their primary insurance. But I want to say that the automobile is theirs and they're on their own with regard to the property. Might be worth checking, because if that's the case, I want to say that that's something that I've been told before.
Yeah.
You know, we'll cover you if you run into somebody who damages somebody else's car, we would be on the hook to help back that up. But if your car's totaled, sorry, that was your car. You've got coverage for that, and you're on your own, because we didn't own the car.
Correct.
If you rent a car and we pay the rental bill, that's as good as the district owning it for the period of time of rental, and the district would be on the hook. But people should
And then
know
we
that.
actually can't do that because then it's not a personal vehicle for
Right.
incidental use, and then it has to be signed as a bus.
No, it's
and
different,
now-
exactly.
That's why we have to make sure they have their insurance.
So yeah, just make sure, because
Yeah.
I wouldn't
I
want
think
to leave
that's-
I wouldn't want to leave an employee participating in this process and not knowing the fullness of what the coverage is and isn't.
Sure. We'll confirm that with Primex, and we'll also make sure that that's added to the form that they fill out authorizing us to
Perfect,
create
yeah.
a check.
That's a great add. It's a good policy. So that's a first read.
Yes.
Any other questions or thoughts? Anything else before we move into continuing items? And the night continues. So, continuing item number 1 is shared services. We're getting closer and closer to Lisa literally leaping
Yeah.
from one room to the other. Any more update on that? Good night, Chris. Thank you. Oh, you do have.
In fact, I do. So those go that way. And then these go this way. These are the same document, but in 2 colors. So, Town Administrator Steve Fournier today sent me the sheet with the blue only. It's the one I passed down first. The Town Council discussed the blue changes to the MOU at their meeting last night regarding shared services for a Buildings and Grounds Facilities Director position. So they added line B. They added the word replacement to line F. These are both under number 4. And they contemplated changing the term for termination of the agreement to 3 months rather than 6 months in item 8. So I share those with you. And then when I received that from him today, I made a couple of changes that you see in yellow. One in item 3 was a typo. It said finance should say facilities.
Yep.
And then I separated 4, ran right into that list of bullets, so I just made that a separate item, numbered 5, and reworked the responsibilities for supervision with respect to the school department, just so it read a little bit more cleanly. But I think...
Because we want somebody to
looking for
supervise our
feedback.
custodians at the school.
The head custodian,
Yeah.
yep. And I'm not sure that the town is looking at that in the same way, so just specifying what our need is on that front.
Meredith, are there any concerns with the 3 month, 6 month to 3 month termination?
Well, certainly again, it's an impact both financially and in terms of a turnaround. It could mean that the person works for the town. So if either party terminates that agreement, say in December, the contract would terminate then in March. That could leave you potentially for 3 months without. And again, because of the way the financial piece is divided, it could leave us very short of funds.
Right.
So that kind of puts
For
us
the
in a very
position.
difficult position to accept that part.
So, did they share any, the language that was there previously is the same language we have for the business position?
That's correct. I don't have insight into the change other than they're looking to have more flexibility. I can't speak further to that. I can certainly seek that clarification.
That might be helpful.
I have
They
2
did say that there were a lot of things that were incorrect and needed to be changed, like the reference to the financial service.
Yeah, I think
Should be
those-
facilities, and that they wanted to wait and have a clean document before they decided. So they were, both of those resolutions were put off till the next meeting.
Good.
I have 2 thoughts on it. First of all, the broadest thought is, we've talked about it before, this is a prenup. If we don't love each other, this is what's going to happen. So I'm not particularly focused on that. But as a practical matter, the difference between 3 months and 6 months makes no sense to me at all. I mean, just based on what Meredith just said, that.
Especially if we've already agreed to 6 for good sufficient reason, why 3 now?
Yeah, I think we need to find out why, but, this is, we seem to be spending a lot of time on what if it doesn't work stuff. rather than what if it does. And
How do I make sure it does?
so if the council is just doing this to be picky, I would hope they would think about it differently.
Thank you.
We have not yet voted.
That's correct. And
There's every hope that maybe we both get another meeting here, maybe on the 16th. It's good enough to go with.
I think that would be the hope.
Will you share that?
I will.
But that's our hope.
So one thing, if we're getting on in time, but in terms of the management, and this may be getting into the weeds and beyond our prerogative, but I'm thinking of this paragraph, I think it's B now, is it B? 5B? They have, this person will have direct management and supervisory responsibility of town and school employees, and you talked about custodial staff. How's that going to work on a functional level? Will the principals of the buildings still have the ability to direct and?
So if you switch to the second document, the one with the yellow highlights, I broke out an A as it relates to the school facilities department, selects and recommends person to be hired, disciplines, discharged, or promoted, and supervises head custodians. So yes, I mean, a building principal is still directing employees within their building, and that happens with special education teachers whose direct supervisor may be the special education director, but on a practical basis, they're answering to the building principal with respect to their daily schedule and duties and those pieces. So operationally, I don't see there being a difference there. The head custodians are the primary people on call in the building during the day. The facilities director oversees them with respect to these other pieces, the maintenance plans,
Right.
ordering
shared.
of supplies, those pieces, but it's essentially shared.
Definitely, I would suggest your amended version, push that back with the question, what's up with 3 and 6, just so that we can know why. And
But to prolong this, I think it's getting to the point now where both the school board and the town council have agreed this is a good idea. We need to get moving on this thing. And we've got a facilities needs right now, and to be delaying this over whether the facilities director gets 3 months' notice or 6 months, or whatever, is not acting in behalf of the community.
anything else? Anything else under shared services? Okay, communications. Oh, no, facilities.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, the deliberative session is important for people to attend this Saturday. The school portion starts at 10. The town portion starts before that at 9. It's at the junior senior high. And it's important not only just for two purposes, so people can voice their concerns, and that's been part of our process all along in terms of public process. Concerns or thoughts or suggestions, encouragement, discouragement, whatever it is, but we want to hear from that. And to that end, we've made provisions to have all of our professionals there. So they'll be there to ask technical questions, I suppose, if somebody should have one. That's really all I had on the facilities front, other than several of us met with the editorial board last week of the Seacoast papers, and there were a couple recent articles that people can pick up on Seacoast. Nate has a hard copy on Seacoast Online that provides some more information on it. There was an editorial on Sunday.
Newmarket school plan, worthy of approval.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to everybody.
Thanks to the editorial board. I mean, that's just great.
Thanks for everybody who took time out of the middle of their day to go over there, and I think it took the better part of 2 hours. And thanks to the editorial board for entertaining us, and we appreciate it.
So
So just a couple notes related to, and I guess it lapses into communication, so stop me if we need to, but I just wanted to acknowledge that there have been a number of community meetings going on as well. Mike and I and Al attended a meeting at Moody Point with residents there. I met with several members of the facilities committee with folks at the Sunrise Sunset Center earlier this week. We had an information session on the 26th at the elementary school where I guess there were about a dozen new folks maybe in attendance. And again, those coming up on February 15th, and there are a number of folks in the community who have requested and agreed to sort of host neighborhood meetings in their.
Yep, there's 6 of them scheduled thus far in variety park homes in the community, so we're thankful for the hosts and hostesses who have agreed to hold those. With the deliberative session, there were the Blackboard stuff that went out on the newsletter list and the Blackboard list yesterday. I'll be in the lobby tomorrow handing out half sheets of paper with a reminder, tomorrow afternoon at pickup. We have a great committee of individuals from the town who are helping us with the communication efforts, and I'm grateful for them as well. And I thank them for their efforts. And Meredith, I know you do too. So, thank you.
Folks received a mailer also earlier this week, and
it was really, I got some really good feedback on the mailer from people who didn't follow it necessarily, but finally said, aha, I gotcha. I think it did its.
There was an uptake in the likes to the Facebook page.
Oh, is that right?
And I think probably because it was referenced on there. So.
And I know in speaking with the town clerk that she's had a handful of phone calls, and a couple of folks have stopped in just with general questions about the project. So that's great. That's what we want, people to be informed and have as much information as they need to make a decision.
That went out to everybody?
It went out to everyone, all registered voters in town. The town, that's the list that's available.
How many people were at the Sunrise Center?
I'm looking at your faces like you're going to tell me the answer to that, but none of you were able to be there. I would say maybe 15, somewhere in that vicinity. Again, great questions and really helpful. A number of people actually had their flyers in hand. So I think they appreciated the opportunity to ask questions. And that session, again, the facilities committee members who've taken time out of their day to be present and help share information and be responsive to the public's questions.
So under the topic of communication, one of the things that we had talked about once upon a time was letters to the editor, and we had said it should start with us, and I had drafted, that was a month ago now, I drafted some notes. I cleaned those up. I wasn't sure if maybe we'd already done it or if we still did, maybe we didn't want to do it, but if we do want to do it, having us put anything in the public that says, so we say all of us, needs to be an action of all of us, right? So we need a meeting to be able to vote this. We can't just send out something that says signed the Newmarket School Board. Whether we signed it or not, it really ought to, for transparency's sake, it ought to have an action of the board. That's why I brought it here, and I apologize I didn't make the packet. I hadn't really thought about it until I got ready, said, oh, I ought to find those notes and finish that letter. So if you want to take a minute and skim through that, contemplate whether you think this is appropriate, and maybe it reaches what we want to do or not.
I think it looks great, Nate. Thank you for doing it again. I didn't fly spec it, but it reads well.
Again, I like how you have the Newmarket school projects. I think the more we get that out there, the better.
Make sure I got that right. NewmarketSchoolProjects.com.
Correct.
Yeah, and just an additional thought. I didn't know whether our facilities committee might want to get in on.
Yeah.
Have them write a letter.
Well, adding to this one.
Or make it from them too, if they like. I mean, I worked really hard to get it into 300 words so that it could satisfy the Seacoast Online's standard. you know how wordy I am in general. So
Are you punching up towards the?
I'm at 300.
Oh,
I'm at
you
300. I'm at 300 without. I'm at 300 without the signature block.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't scrutinize this. I think this is, we should do whatever we need to do to do it.
If we did a motion, let's make it.
Yeah.
We can. The facilities committee can also do one, but let's let it fly.
Yeah.
Motion from Mr. Kennison, second from Mr. Zink. All those in favor of publishing or pushing forward the letter to the editor of the Seacoast News, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And we're unanimous there.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.
Now, and can Meredith send one? Do we have, just as a superintendent?
She certainly could. What's the pleasure of the board? And the
If you
superintendent.
wanted to, in your free time.
No, I mean, I think at the board's direction, if it's to provide additional information about the project, I walk that fine line of advocacy, but I certainly could echo comments. I mean, I think that's your role as elected representatives.
That's why we started this, yeah, like.
Yeah, and I think we hired Meredith to exercise her judgment, and I would leave that to her. But on with the fine point that this is about getting information out.
Yeah.
I don't know as we're in the appropriate role that advocate, vote this way. It's just get the info out.
So that everybody knows, we just voted the letter, but just not walk away. Let me read the first paragraph because it's important. And just want to make sure that we're all okay. The Newmarket School Board wants residents to know that the March 14th school district ballot will include a bond proposal to invest in both our elementary and junior-senior high schools with much-needed renovations and additions. We appreciate the news coverage provided and are so pleased by the editorial support published on January 29th. We respect that this may not be the preferred solution for everyone, but we genuinely hope that you will support this extremely important proposal. That's, again, to what Mike just said, I thought that was as... Obviously, we put it on the ballot. You've been doing the work, right? We want this to pass, but, I stopped shy of, vote yes on too, or whatever, so...
You want to change support? Is that the...
No, I like it. I like it as it is, but I think if we're asking Meredith maybe to write, this maybe even goes further than she wants. She didn't put it on the ballot.
Okay.
She's not promoting it. She could say, as the superintendent who has,
I hope that
supervised
you will
us,
take the time to become informed.
and here's the factual
the
information,
detail.
and here's the website, and here's the, if we wanted her to do that. Now, we probably have there's probably a handful of people that are lined up and ready to write similar letters to this,
There are
to
some.
follow us, so.
Well, let's go back to this advocacy thing again.
Yep.
Does that support bother you?
I rewrote it, personally, I rewrote that 3 or 4 times, and I came back to, you know what, I think we have to say, I was comfortable, on your behalf, I was comfortable saying, I know it's not, because I've said this publicly to multiple people, I know that that's not going to be the right answer for everybody, and I respect that, but I hope you'll support it.
I mean, you guys know better than...
I think, I like that
I'm
way.
fine. Oh, me too.
Okay, good.
I think it's good too.
But I thought it was illustrative to say, Meredith probably shouldn't say the same thing.
Right.
She's got to ride that line a little tighter, and so, good.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for doing this. I think this is so important.
Anything else under our continuing items? I just can't miss the opportunity again and again and again to say, thank you so much, you guys. It's such a pleasure working with this administrative team, with this board. There's so much work being done and so much being invested in our community. I really appreciate everything that folks are doing. We had minutes in the packet. First is, I'm going to catch up. I got my paper, I messed up my paper, and I actually had some notes. There you go. The first is the bond and budget hearing. So if we can take that one separately, there were 2 meetings that happened, right? And this says Budget Committee, School Public Hearing. There was first a bond hearing, that is the responsibility of the school board, and you opened the meeting and then closed it. And that really probably should be separated from the public hearing on the budget, which is the Municipal Budget Committee's responsibility under law, as opposed to it being one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because specifically, you closed the meeting, and that's probably where it should end. You closed the meeting on page 4 at 7:46, and then Dan Smith, as the vice chair, opened the meeting of his budget committee. So, no, that's okay. The nuance of that, it was great. So as I look at it,
The way I did it last year.
yeah.
Don't worry.
So,
There was no, anyway.
so the only thing I would say, the only other thing that I would say by way of amendment is, I would love it if somewhere I could be noted as arriving late, because I joined you somewhere in the middle of page 4, about the time Matt Evangelista would get up to talk.
I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, no problem. I snuck in and sat in the back and didn't want to interrupt anybody, but. So, you want to, I mean, I guess we could, with that amendment, recognizing that we don't have to vote on the public hearing because it wasn't our meeting, but on the bond hearing we do, with the amendment of cutting the rest of it off and making sure that someone says I actually showed up. Anything else anybody wants to add to that or amend? Then hearing none, is there a motion to approve those as amended?
Yes.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Zink, a second from Mr. Kennison to adopt the January 12th, 2017 bond hearing minutes as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. And then before us, the meeting of January 19th. I was absent, so I'll abstain. The only thing I would suggest on page 3, this calendar 2017, just a typo. And on page 4, is it Timberlane or Timberland? Timberlane, so that's spelling. Anything else on the minutes of the 19th? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Ms. Shelton. Any other discussion? Motion then to approve the minutes of January 19th, 2017 as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Abstain.
Oh, both of us do.
Right.
3-0. 3-4, and 3 in support, 0 in opposition, and Mike and I both abstaining for absence. Somewhere at the table, we have manifests tonight, did we? I should sign them.
Motion to approve the payroll and AP manifest of 2/2/17, payroll manifest in the amount of $249,937.79. Accounts payable, $439,714.81 for a total of $689,652.60.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Zink, a second from Ms. Shelton to accept the manifest as presented this evening. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? We stand unanimous. Anything else that should be before us tonight? It's been a long night, a lot of work done. Any reason to go non-public? It's nice that we do that so little now. I need a motion to adjourn. Oops, wait a minute.
Did you have another donation, I thought you said?
Yeah, I don't think we can accept it now. I want to make sure linked together.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Excellent.
Sorry.
No problem. Motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kennison, second from Ms. McKinney. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we are out at 9:38.